I'm Trustee Justin Delaney. Mayor Hales is not available today, so I'll be chairing today. We have a quorum, so let's move forward with approval of the minutes from the March 24th meeting.
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes.
Second? Okay. We will consider them adopted. Thank you. Let's do introduction of visitors, and then we'll follow with public comment period. Why don't we start over here with Lauren? Introduce yourself.
Lauren Downhauer, Outside Trust Counsel.
Ken McGarris, City Attorney's Office.
I'm Ken Rusk, the city's Chief Financial Officer.
Caroline Bechtel, Legal Counsel for Fpdr. Haley Rosenfeld, Desk Law representing
Crystal Dupont, Fpdr Liaison for Police.
Gabe Sandstone, Fpdr Liaison for Fire.
Oh, Joe Jankowski, disabled foot firefighter on disability retirement, retired once, about to be retired twice.
Joe.
On record, trying to retire a second time. I don't understand it. That's why I hope the mayor is here. Respond back to David.
We'll have public comment in a minute.
Del Stevens, retired firefighter, 2003.
Dave Short, retired firefighter, 93. Doug Paul, retired firefighter, 95.
All the way back there.
Henry Gripper, retired Board of Police.
Henry.
Me, Sam Hutchison, the Bureau Director, Fpdr.
Jason Lehman, Fire Trustee.
Dave Doherty, Citizen Trustee.
And Justin Delaney, Citizen Trustee. Kathy, do we have anybody signed up for public comment? Okay. Go ahead and call them.
Mr. Joe Jankowski and Del Stevens.
Go ahead, Joe, first.
First thing I want to comment on, take about 2 minutes on, the audit that was done here by Milliman. They did an audit here, and I was here last month for the presentation. And during the presentation, they spoke about how our system was rather unique. Fpdr is rather unique in the sense that they give a pension for a non-service connected pension, and that was very unique, they said. And they've looked far and wide, and there's no one else around that has that. I've got a document here you guys can have. It's off the internet. It's from PERS website. It talks about the non-service disability retirement and disability retirement under ORS laws that are required under ORS. And unfortunately, I only have one copy, but I can give you this copy. I say it's on the internet too, but it shows that PERS throughout the whole state does give a non-service disability pension. So I just question that one part of her report comes into question, I thought.
Maybe you can leave it with Ms. Kakasaka.
I will. And you guys should look further into that. The second thing was, last month I spoke to the mayor that I received a letter that said I was medically separated in May 27th, 2005, and it said there that I had 5 years to come back to work according to the city charter. After 5 years passed by, May 27th, 2010, I knew in my mind that I was no longer a city employee. I didn't receive anything from the city, and at the time, I didn't pursue it at the moment because we were involved. We had our daughter and only child was murdered during that time, and we were involved in a lawsuit in another state trying to get our 3 grandchildren, and unfortunately, we didn't get them, and my health came into play in the courtroom, and I couldn't counter that. I had nothing to counter that, so the judge did question my health as far as placing the children, and I didn't get them. The man who murdered my daughter, his brother got the children, so. But anyway, that's another issue that's separate from this. Anyway, but so I knew in 2010 I wasn't there, so I finally started pushing from about 2012 and to about 2014. I finally got a letter after pushing for 2 years, emails and phone calls. Got a letter from the city that says, you were on May 27, 2010, you're gone. You're no longer a city employee. In fact, you're a civilian. And you didn't retire on a pension retirement, therefore you don't get your sick leave payoff. I accepted all that. I accepted everything, said fine, as long as you leave me alone, I thought. Then 2015 rolls around, I get a letter telling me, on your 30th anniversary, we're going to retire you. Again, I said, wait a minute, I'm a civilian. You can't, FPDR retires police officers and firefighters. According to the charter, I was retired as a civilian on disability in 2015. During that time, in that time frame, in 2009, they froze my disability and my income. They said any injured cop or firefighter who goes off is no longer entitled to the benefits of the contract. We went in court 3 years. We won. It stopped at the Court of Appeals. We were successful in winning and said the charter stays the way it is. A disabled police officer or firefighter is entitled to be compensated at the rank and position they held at the time of injury leave. So I finally got a raise back from 2009, and then we moved forward again. 2015 rolls around. I get my letter in 2014 from the city, says you're gone. You lost your sick leave payoff. You're no longer an employee. You're a civilian. I accept that. 2015 comes. I get a question here telling me that in May, then it was actually April, May 17th, we're going to retire you again as per the charter. Well, look at this section of the charter over here. I said, wait a minute, this over here says I'm a civilian. I have a certified letter that said I'm here from the Fire Bureau in the city, Human Resources. And they said, well we already have this rules here. You're tied to Fpdr. And I said, well, I'm tied to Fpdr until the day I die. I'll be tied to Fpdr, as every retiree is tied to Fpdr, and so is every disabled person, and then their spouse is retired to Fpdr. So we still have ties to Fpdr. So as far as that argument goes. Anyway, I just said, I came to the mayor and I gave the mayor the letter last month saying, look, it says here, they're going to do it again to me. It says I'm a civilian right here. He took that, so I'll get back to you. I got a letter back a few weeks later from Fpdr, and I assume it's the mayor's response, and it was rather threatening. It says that if you don't come in and sign those, on May 17th, sign those papers, your disability stops immediately. You'll receive no more disability checks. It stops. So what they're doing is they're applying one set of rules over here telling me and taking stuff away from me. Then they say, oh, forget that over here, we'll put you over here. You're a civilian, yeah, but now over here we're going to retire you a second time. And I don't see how you can do that. And I think I want to bring to the board's attention because it's a big conflict here, either in the charter, but all these things are done. I didn't do anything. I just sat there and waited, and all these things came to me. And so now I assume it's the mayor's response, but I got a rather threatening letter telling me that if you don't come, that's it, your disability stops. Because I had no intention of going down there and signing anything. Because in my mind, I know that I'm a civilian, according to stuff that I received in 2000, that said, as per the charter, in 2010. I didn't do this. They medically separated me. They applied the charter to me and said, you're gone. You're gone. We keep your sick leave. Fine. They wanted to set a precedent for everybody else. That's fine. I said, I accepted all of that. So they kept $50,000, $40,000 of mine. I accepted all that. Keep it. Leave me alone. I said, please, I need to heal. Okay, I need to focus on healing. I'm going through treatment now for hepatitis right now. It's my third time for treatment. I failed twice before. I'm on my third time treatment now. I'm hoping. What I have an autoimmune response to hepatitis. My digestive tract stopped working. I'm one step away from a colostomy bag. And so I go through if you've been through a colonoscopy, I go through that practice every day, 7 days a week. I go through that practice. That's my evening and morning ritual. I go through that practice every day because my digestive tract stopped working. The next thing I have is I got stabbing pains, fingertips and toes. I work for a while. Now it's full body. So I'm on tons of narcotics and other medications. I'm only here because I'm on 10 medications right now, and that's why I'm here to speak to you today. But I don't understand how they can retire me over here and say I'm a civilian, and then 5 years later come back, so we're going to retire you again and change your status again, and they're applying the charter differently. In fact, Fpdr says now there's no more disability retirement, and there's tons of guys retired on disability retirement. Now they even got rid of that. They're saying, well, we're going to follow the letter of the law now, and we don't have a disability retirement anymore. But they did it to me, and so there's a big conflict here, and it needs to be settled here, or it's going to be settled in the courts. And I'm coming forward to try and settle it here. Their solutions are there. It's very clear. ORS spells it out very clearly how it's supposed to be.
Joe, thank you for coming, explaining the issue. This is something that's new to me.
Yes.
I understand you did approach the mayor last time. They're looking at it. This isn't an appropriate forum for individual benefit disputes, though. So what we're going to do now that the three of us are up to speed, we'll take it offline with staff, and we'll have somebody get back to
Thank you.
Okay?
That's why I thought this was, after the mayor, I thought this was the mayor's response, because he said someone would get back to me, and I got this in the mail after that.
And they may have, but yeah. Sam, did you want to add in?
Okay.
I sent that to you because I want you to be very clear, per the charter that FPDR administers, your disability benefits end when you hit retirement age. There's nothing in the charter, never has been anything that allows a person to receive disability benefits beyond the disability retirement age. So I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that because we are required by the charter, FPDR, to terminate your retirement benefits when you hit 30 years. And in order for you to get any retirement benefits thereafter, you have to come and sign for them. I know you may be disputing it, but I don't want to be the person in there encouraging you not to sign up and get your benefit that you're entitled to, because I'm going to hold the charter the way it's written. And
I understand.
I'm just telling you that this is what's happening. So I really urge that you sign it, and if you have a disagreement, that can be settled later, and maybe if there's courts, anything get trued out. But I hate to see you go without no money, and that's why you need to come in and sign that retiree so we can at least get your retirement benefits.
Well, I'd go on the record right now and say I'd rather have no money at all and take the risk of losing everything and doing something wrong that affects me for the rest of my life. I understand you're following a charter, but they also followed a charter when they got rid of me in 2010. You know, and said I'm a civilian, I'm gone. You know, so how do you do both? There's a conflict here in the charter that needs to be resolved. I know it's not resolved here, but you know, I've been a test case for freezing disability wages. I've been a test case for a number of things here. You know, taking away your sick leave payoff. You know, so that, and I accept all that. I accept that. You know, that's fine. I accept all that. That has to be somebody. So it's me. But and I understand you're doing your job as per the charter. I understand that. Okay. Okay. Then I didn't get a response from then as far as then I guess go public. Then there's no response from the mayor yet. That's all. Huh?
All right, we got to move on,
Yes,
guys.
thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to
I'll
our
deal with that
attention.
with FPDR.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes, Del Stevens, retired fire department. I'm going to keep talking about some of the issues that have been ongoing that have not been completed or addressed. And the first one I'll bring up is at the last meeting and several previous meetings, I've talked about the fact that the schedule of the Portland Fire Disability and Retirement Fund should be posted. It should be a public posting, and apparently nobody responds.
Mr. Stevens, hold on.
Yes.
On agenda item 4 today, if you'd refer to your agenda, we have a session scheduled to get back to you on some of these issues. So let's defer that.
Well, that'd be fine. And my last comment on that would be that I had a whole collection of public announcements from public agencies about how they conduct their meetings. And I think that we should certainly be in conformance with the way it's done normally.
We'll remain in conformance with the law, not with other agencies. But item 4 on the agenda. We'll see
All
you
right.
then.
And may I comment on that when that time comes?
Sure.
All right. The next one was the overpayment of the COLA issue. And Nancy Hartline
That's on
addressed
agenda
that.
item 4 as well, Del.
Well, okay, then I guess I'll comment after.
Up under agenda item 4, this is public comment period.
Well,
You've got your own section at today's meeting, in other words.
well, I'm not asking for my own section. I just want to make sure that these issues are being represented properly, that's all.
Well, as we've told you in the past, we take everything you bring to us seriously. It's not always going to be resolved to your satisfaction.
Right?
Today, under agenda item 4, we're going to put a nail in it, okay?
All right, appreciate that. And I understand that there's going to be discussion about the disability report that was not voted on at the last meeting.
Correct.
Are we going to discuss it prior to voting on it?
Is there a sign-up option after the disability report is delivered today? Yeah, so you can sign up under that agenda item.
Okay. And then my last issue that I'll bring up, and I know that it's a controversial issue, and some people don't even want to talk about it, but 3 years ago, I talked about the issue of a disability that is non-taxable, having advantages for the member and for the fund and for the city taxpayers. And it's pretty well been set aside and not addressed. And I do have a letter that was sent to me. The mayor at one of the meetings said he was going to send me a letter personally to my home, which he's done. It's never been entered into the minutes, and I'm not going to do it today. But in the letter, he basically is saying that he has no interest, or the pension board has no interest in studying further or pursuing the idea of a tax-neutral disability system, okay? And that was his apparently last word on it, but it's never been announced publicly. And I believe that the city is missing out on an opportunity for savings of funds. And I think that it's imperative and obligatory upon the board to pursue savings when they're available. And I don't think this issue should be just settled with a letter from the mayor saying there's no interest in pursuing it. It's an issue that I guarantee is not going to go away. It's too important to the people that are disabled. And I think there's a potential savings for the fund, and I think it needs to be looked at. And I don't understand why there was a reluctance to include it in the disability study that I offered amendments to so that it would be possible to identify different areas to study. It was completely left out. You had actuarial people that were on contract that could have certainly included that in it. As a matter of fact, part of their report was actually addressed to look at potential savings. And they were prevented from doing that because my amendments were not even considered. Anyway, I just want to say that this is an important issue, and it's not the end of it. And I hope the board takes it seriously, because that's part of their responsibility. A fiduciary oath means you have a responsibility to not just the members, but to the fund and the taxpayers of the city. And I don't believe that the board is acting responsibly to that.
Disagree with that characterization, but thank you for your public
Okay.
comment, Del. Pam, did you have anything to add? No. Okay, let's move on to the aforementioned disability audit report. Kim?
I've asked Kim Mitchell to come and help do the presentation today. This has been, due to snow and other type of meetings, it's been quite a while since we've been trying to get this presented to you. So in your board packet, you've got 3 different documents. The first document is a copy of the PowerPoint presentation provided by Millman at the last board meeting. I'd also sent it to you in an email. The second document is the actual report, which I think was included in your January and March, and now this board link. So this will be the 3rd time you've seen that copy. And then the last part, which is what we'll present to you today, is Fpdr response to that audit. Okay, so the first thing is why the audit? Well, you know, in 2007, Fpdr went through a significant change on how to administer disability benefits. And there was a couple of audits for the next 2 years evaluating how those benefits were being administered, and came out with some recommendations. And there was an agreement at the time that we would follow up those audits in about 5 years with another audit, just to see how the disability claim management has progressed since those audits. And that's why we're here today. Now, for the scope of this audit was looking at only the workers' compensation type benefits, only the disability. It was not looking at anything having to do with pension benefits, so that we just keep that scope of what this audit was for. I think as you look through the results, you've heard them last week and seen in the reports, the program is working as intended. The quality of claim adjudication and management is commendable. We do have some areas we're going to look at, and we'll discover those today. Kim and I had done a lot of discussing of the program prior to the audit, and interestingly, most of what was identified was already on Kim and my's list of things to work on. And in a few cases, we'd actually started working on solutions before the audit came in. So I felt very positive that the audit did not uncover anything else that we already did not know about our program. So the audit objectives were to evaluate and recommend improvements to the Bureau's current disability management practices, evaluate and recommend potential cost savings, including process improvements, and this is cost savings in the disability, the workers' compensation component of Fpdr, to recommend a design for an internal benchmark program that will allow the Bureau to measure future performance against baseline benchmarks, evaluate how the Bureau's disability benefits compare with similar occupational disability programs for public safety officers, and then lastly, compare our results to the prior results of 2008 and 2009 audits. With that, we'll have Kim walk you through, give you a high-level overview of the next few pages. And if you have any questions, feel free to intercede during or after our presentation. Kim?
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to the Milliman audit today. The ability to see our work through the lens of industry professionals who have audited claim organizations across the country, and who took the time to understand the unique nature of the Fpdr program was really a good and productive experience for us. So Milliman's expertise, insight, feedback, and restraint was appreciated by my staff and I. We have and will continue to implement the program changes to promote our continued objective, which is to administer the program in accordance with the charter and administrative rules, our missions and values. So our response to the Milliman audit corresponds with the 8 audit recommendations outlined in Appendix A of the audit report. It's placed after page 24 in the audit report for your reference. When Christine spoke in March, she grouped the items into 4 main categories where opportunities for improvement were identified. And this is on page 7 of the PowerPoint in your board book, which is the first presentation in there. And the 4 categories where opportunities for improvement were identified were with regards to claim manual, training program, management reports, and small potential for savings through SGA compliance. So what I'd like to do now is go through the 8 items that were highlighted in our response. And the first is the creation of a technical claims manual. We currently do use a procedure manual. It is a document originated in, as a hard copy toolkit, but is placed in Word, and it is something used by our staff to get information about claim practices and procedures. It is, however, a really large manual because since the reform and the 8 years subsequent to that time, there's been a lot of addition to that information by staff and others. And the new staff who don't have the institutional knowledge of where information would be in that big manual have had some challenges finding information. So Milliman's insight about our manual and the need to really create a more structured document was well noted. It's something we anticipated prior to the audit, and it just renewed our dedication to get that thing updated and done for our staff and for management to use. So I am working on that, working with my staff to make sure we've incorporated the suggestions of Milliman in that document and other policies and procedures that we've used historically, because that information is significant in that it's helped us achieve the level of performance that we experience today, so we don't want to lose that. Christine had mentioned in her audit report that we will continually need to update this document so that it remains relevant for all users. So we're working on that. The second recommendation was with regards to management report implementation. And we do recognize the benefit of having reports to compare, analyze, and monitor our work product and claims handling over the duration of a claim, and to measure our program activities, successes, and opportunities for improvement. Sam, the staff, and I have met to discuss reports recommended by Milliman and those listed in Appendix C of the report to determine which ones will best aid in the evaluation of our program. We appreciate Milliman's caution not to create too many reports. We want to make sure that what we use is effective and that it provides us and you the information that is helpful to see how our program is performing. And so we're looking at everything and working with our senior business systems analysts to create reports that we can use to evaluate our program. The next item was the recommendation for a formal training program. We currently use a one-on-one need-based training program. We don't have a lot of turnover in the Fpdr program, but for the people who we have brought on board, they come to Fpdr with certain skills and abilities, and what we like to do is look at where their needs are and provide training for them with those needs. And we also include a review of our charter and administrative rules, our internal policies and procedures. But as part of the creation of our technical claims manual, we will also use that as a training manual for staff and new hires so that the policies and procedures that we use are preserved for those that need them in the future. So number 4 on the list was claim reassignment. In late 2012, when we were evaluating our program needs, which include our goal at that time to bring medical bill audit in-house, we had anticipated that the person who would be doing the medical bill audit program would, at some point in the future, be able to handle medical-only claims, which are the smaller claims. It would afford a training opportunity and a path for growth for that person, but would also help us reduce the number of claims assigned to each analyst. So we had anticipated that that's something that would happen once we were able to get the medical bill audit program fully functioning and running. Then we instituted the claim reassignment and really adjusted our numbers, and we are currently consistent with the claim count recommended by Milliman in their audit report, and that was completed in November of 2014. The next recommendation was for an automated diary system. We don't currently have an automated diary system. Our staff and I use Outlook or database fields to track and review our claim activity. Sam and I certainly discussed automated diary systems, which are usually part of a larger workflow management system. We realize that it may be cost prohibitive, but we continue to discuss the potential benefit for an automated system.
Fair to say that's a nice to have, not a,
Yes, yes, yeah. So the next item were new initiatives and program evaluations. Fpdr management and the board, even prior to the audit, had recommended and recognized the benefit of tracking the success of the disability program with particular attention to the return to work program. We recognize, and I think Christine spoke on the benefits of and the importance of early return to work, the psychological empowerment, the social integration and improvement that comes when we get members back to work. Sam, the staff, and I have started to look at how we've captured information regarding our transitional duty program historically, and will continue to work to identify metrics for evaluating and reporting on the transitional duty program so we can see where there's room for opportunity and to report the successes of the program. Number 7 is the member accountability and opportunity for saving in SGA cases. Milliman reported about the saving opportunities that might be experienced by suspending or terminating benefits for members who aren't complying with their obligation to report earnings or wage information when they are obligated to seek employment. Sam and I have identified a few cases where noncompliance with providing information to Fpdr has had some past practice implications that have resulted in our inability to immediately suspend or reduce benefits by Milliman. But what we have done was increased our focus on member compliance and we are working to provide our members with samples of information and how they can report information to us that's accurate so that they can comply and so that we then can move forward with enforcing the suspension or reduction of benefits if they don't comply. And then the number 8 was manual accounting functions. Prior to the Milliman audit, Fpdr management, Nancy and Sam, had recognized the need to identify key functions of the disability accountant desk to ensure accurate benefit calculation, effective and efficient operations. A consultant was hired in October and the evaluation was completed in January. The Fpdr management team reviewed the consultant's recommendations, and Nancy has information in that report in our board book for review. So as Christine advised in March, they did a lot of interviews. They viewed everybody that they could about the Fpdr program and plan, including a few of you trustees here. And our takeaway from the interviews was that our disability team, Sam, myself, the analyst, and our fire and police liaisons do respect the roles and responsibilities of each of our team members, that we do have a greater support for involvement of our liaisons in the Fpdr program, and we have certainly called upon them and used them more as we look to identify areas of operation that impact our member, and we seek the liaison's input for how that information would be understood and perceived. So we've moved right along in incorporating and using our team that way. We certainly have concern for our members and retirees as well. There was an acknowledgement that we have training needs and opportunities to build on our current program successes, but overall we've got good morale, we've got teamwork and support at the individual and program level, so we're pleased with that. Our next steps then are to address any additional concerns that might be identified today, and continue to work to create our ways to measure our program success and to solidify our objectives and criteria to assure the continued success of our program, particularly our return to work program, the transitional duty, et cetera. And then to, again, continue to work to enhance our work with members who have met SGA and who are required to seek employment or and report wages, to just work with them to make sure they know exactly what they need to do so that they're complying with their obligations under the charter. And I think our plan after today is just following up with you at the September board meeting about our implementation of the whole piece of this audit report.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think, I do want to compliment, I think I said before also.
I get to compliment.
What?
I get to compliment.
No, I'm going to compliment Kim and her staff, just because the work, when I came in, I thought, well, it was obvious to me there was no real big changes that had to be made to the program, which made my job very easy coming in as the bureau director. As I learned more very specific about the plan, we identified small areas to improve and had started work on it, but that was also reinforced by Milliman coming in. There's no deficiencies in this program. People are doing darn well. There are some things we can do to improve and just reinforce the work that they're doing. So I thought it was a good result.
It's phenomenal. And we have not had an audit this good in the past, and it's been many years of attention on the disability program that wasn't in bad shape in the past when I joined the board, but it's about, I don't know that you could expect a better audit than this. I mean, Milliman audits public and private sector disability programs. I'm familiar with them. They are not easy. And to have comments like you're significantly better than other similar programs in your claims handling is a huge compliment from them. And the thing that pleases me the most, two things. One is the return to work success that they call out, that you're well beyond your peers, and that we're not overstaffed for claims for the taxpayers on the line.
Right.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a collaborative effort, and I appreciate the work of our staff and the liaisons in making sure that our return to work efforts work. So thank you.
Ready for comment?
Public
We have
comments,
to
yes.
sign up. Sam, you probably want to stay.
What?
You probably want to stay on hand
On the table?
or close by.
Okay.
I probably commented out of place there, but the form that I gave you about Oregon PERS having non-service disability retirement as well, it's on their website. I got it from the website. Sorry I didn't have more copies, but they do have a non-service disability retirement that is similar to ours, and talks about you don't get it for a certain amount of time. It's very similar to ours. They're both very close as far as in their structure, as far as how the member gets it, that benefit for non-services.
Okay. And
So-
we'll have this
And like I said,
distributed
right,
to the rest
so,
of the
so
board.
there are other ones out there, and they're pretty close by.
Thank you.
Thank you for the letter, too.
Dell, your turn.
Well, I don't know enough about that right now.
Okay, I just was clarifying something with Joe. Well, just a couple things I wanted to ask. They talked in there about that the pension board is not there to reduce benefits to save money. See if I can find that.
I don't think anybody would disagree with that assertion. You don't need to find it in the report.
Well, but oh, here it is. It's on page 2. It says, all interviewees agreed that the purpose of Fpdr and the board is not to look for ways to reduce benefits to members, but rather to administer benefits to which members are entitled in a fair and efficient manner. Do you think there's some instances have occurred where benefits have been reduced and savings are projected because of that?
It's not the same question that you started with.
Well, it may not be, but it certainly relates to the fact that if a benefit is reduced, there's an expectation of money being saved, correct?
But, okay, the scope of this against the workers' compensation or the disability component.
Yeah.
Well,
Not pension or
If you have a
retirement.
comment about the audit or
Well,
lack of
this
the
is addressing it, yes.
disability in here, go ahead, but we're not going to do back and forth about whether our role is to reduce benefits. and
Well,
save money.
but it's a comment. I mean, they made the comment, I'm just redressing
As
the
I
comment.
said, when you mentioned it, nobody up here would disagree with that.
Okay, well, I want to bring up a couple instances where benefits have been reduced. May I do so?
The report did not say benefits have never been reduced. The report says correctly that as trustees of the system, our job is not to reduce benefits to try to save money. So let's move on to a different topic.
You don't
We've
think
got
that
other
you don't
issues.
think they should acknowledge the fact that benefits have been reduced and money has been saved?
No.
I think they should have, so we
Okay.
differ on that.
You're on the record now. Let's move to the
Okay,
next
fine,
point.
fine. Another thing here is, I noticed that the Milliman and Roberts is so proud of their work that they include in their first paragraph on limitations. It says, Milliman's work has been prepared solely for the internal use of Fpdr. No portion of Milliman's work may be provided to any other party. This is on page 23, without prior written consent. Milliman does not intend to benefit or create a legal duty to any third-party recipient of its work. Members' work may not be filed with the SEC or securities regulatory bodies. Any reader of this report agrees that they shall not use Milliman's name, trademarks, or service marks, or refer to Milliman directly or indirectly, and in any third-party communication without Milliman's prior written consent for each such use or release, which consent shall be given in Milliman's sole discussion. You know, if this is a public document and everybody finds out after they read it that somehow they're held to a promise that they can't quote it or they can't refer to the fact that Milliman is responsible for it, that is an unreasonable condition, and I object strongly to that. And I don't see why the pension board would accept that kind of writing. It makes no sense. If it's an actuarial responsible report and they stand behind their findings, they should certainly acknowledge that they produced those findings. And if legal action would be forthcoming on some issue, I think that it's appropriate that an actuarial report should be quoted from. Isn't that reasonable?
I would agree with you. It seems a little overbroad. We'll have Sam follow up with them.
Would you find out why that's allowed?
Well, I think their words are probably a little more stringent than they actually intended.
I will let you know, I discussed this limitations with them. This is their boilerplate.
Yep.
I think in every report they produce for everybody,
Well,
everywhere,
well,
they have that. I wouldn't
well,
be so, I mean, it's.
Everybody everywhere may not object. I object today.
And that's understood, but I'll tell you, this is boilerplate limitation language. I've already
Well-
talked to them about it, and they stand by it. It means, as far as I'm concerned, I will use the report as I need to and share it where I need to go. And I will not use their name when unnecessary to do it. So if they choose to challenge me on it, that's fine. But this, to me, is just a stock thing. I will continue to use the report, follow it as I go forward.
You're aware that every 10 years, the state of Oregon requires an audit of each pension system compared to PERS? And you know who does those audits?
The last one was Milliman.
Right. Well, don't you think that it would be appropriate if somebody was going to challenge that audit, that they would be able to say, Milliman produced this is their findings, these are the facts, and we want to differ with that? If we can't even use those facts and those assumptions, how can you challenge a report?
Ken, you coming up?
I'll just handle it from here. Del, this limitation is directed at 10Ks and stock offerings, that their information can't be used by third parties to rely on it in those contexts. For our context, we have Oregon Public Records Law, and that would supersede this limitation. So I think this is, your concerns are valid, and limitations of all sorts are problematic, whether they're liability or arbitration clauses or limitations like this. But I would just tell you that the Oregon Public Records Law would supersede it to the extent that there wasn't an exemption otherwise available. So I hear your concerns, but I don't think they're you know, that we can take it too far to make a mountain out of something that's
Well,
appears to be
it's not a
small.
case of making a mountain. It's a case of allowing somebody to differ or question with an assumption made in a report. And the limitation that is there now that is existing prevents somebody from doing that. It's a legal acceptance.
I just heard the city attorney say you may use it as such, so feel free, Del. Let's go on to the
Well,
next
don't you
issue.
think that that should be included then in the language? This does not apply to the Oregon Public Records Law?
The report, we'll let them know about it. Let's move on to the next issue, Del.
Well, all right. On page 1, they did say that a few interviewees mentioned that retired members may not have an advocate or board representation and want to ensure that going forward, retired members' rights and interests are protected. Does the board have any plans to address that? Are you looking at some options for a retired member of the police and the fire department to actually participate in the board?
I agree with the general sentiment that retirees deserve representation. The board does not have the ability to change the complexion of the board.
Well, the board had the ability to make a charter amendment that took a fireman and a policeman off the pension board in 2007. They had the ability to do that.
Fireman there and a policeman over here who's not available today.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you have the ability to balance out the board, and this is a recommendation that was made. Is the board taking that recommendation
Del,
serious?
Del, you are repeating my comments to the auditor. We're on the same team here, okay?
And is the board moving forward on that? Is that an issue that
That you deserve representation. I don't intend in any way or fashion to try to change the makeup of the board unless you're going to fund a campaign to go out to voters to amend the charter.
Well,
So Del, just,
yes.
as you know, I represent the firefighters, and it includes the retired firefighters. I eventually someday hope to be retired, and I think my counterpart, Bob Posch, does the same for the police. So I understand what you're saying. I would probably have a little more insight into it if I was a retired person, but at this point in time, with the makeup of the board, I feel that you can come to me with your concerns. I can't speak on behalf of you. You have to bring me the information, and I'll do my best to understand it. But I don't have any information that there's a charter amendment to add more people to the board at this time.
But I'm just saying that it's a recommendation, and certainly it's something that the board could act on. The board could take it serious, and they could say, that is an important deficit, and we have the ability to correct it, and we're going to look at putting a retired fireman and policeman on the board. I want to raise the issue so the board can deal with it, so it's not just going to go away and be lost in this report. It is important, and I think it's an area that has been overlooked for a long time.
Yeah, I understand too, but
Okay.
one of the other problems we have with that is the numerous retired tiers. You would almost have to have somebody from every tier on there to represent each person too. So we do our best to try to represent everybody at this time, but I know what you're saying and I get it, and maybe the next time we come up to a charter change, that's one of the issues, but as you know, the charter change has been kind of contentious in the past. I don't know when the next one is or what it's going to include, but we'll keep that on the horizon.
I appreciate that there's some support for that idea. That's what I'm asking for is all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, though, you mentioned a recommendation. This audit doesn't recommend a change. It only states that a few interviewees
Right.
mentioned it. So let's keep to the audit and what the audit says.
And Del,
Well,
my
I wouldn't be
comment-
allowed to quote the auditor's name anyway, would I? If I was
You have approval.
trying to.
You could.
Got your approval.
Uh-huh. You can do it. All right, well, that completes my comments about this audit.
Thank you, Del.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. Kathy, any more signups? Okay, let's move on. Sam, ready?
You need to vote to.
Oh, we need to
accept
adopt, I'm
the
sorry.
Millman report and the FPDR
And
response.
the response. Do we need to split it into two votes, Kathy, boss? Is it 2 votes or 1? How'd you prepare it? Okay, I think that's fine. Does anybody dispute we can approve them together?
Sounds good to me.
Response
I
is
would move that
perfectly in
we,
line.
I would move that we approve Milliman's, or the name should not be mentioned, I guess, the audit report as well as the FPDR response.
Second.
Okay. Kathy, would you call roll?
Mr. Delane?
Aye.
Mr. Lina?
Aye.
Mr. Dorr?
Aye.
It's adopted. Let's move on then, Sam. Ken Rust, would you like to come up and join us?
So I'd like to introduce Ken Russ, the new Chief Financial Officer for the City of Portland. I asked Ken to come share his view on the funding of Fpdr with you. I've had the opportunity over the past few weeks to listen to him talk with the Wall Street Journal when we had a conference call with them. The Wall Street Journal had some questions about pension funding and especially Fpdr funding, and also had Ken's presentation to the City Council on the comprehensive annual financial report. So I'm certain you'll find his presentation interesting and informative, and I think you'd like to hear it.
Thank you, Sam. For the record, I'm Ken Russ. I'm the city's Chief Financial Officer. I'm also the Director of the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. And what that means is I'm responsible for central accounting for the city, its grants management program, procurement services, public finance and treasury, and then the collection of revenue for business license taxes and arts tax and things like that. I work for the city in a variety of different capacities, both public sector and private sector, starting back in about 1980. And I've been a public employee employed by the city for about 20 years. I have a fair amount of experience working with Fpdr over the years. You're not going to be a finance person at the city and not have touched Fpdr. Was involved heavily in a reform effort in 1998, which came to council but was not put into effect. That led to the 1999 Charter Reform Committee efforts, which I participated in as a staff person, and then also heavily participated in the 2005 Independent Review Committee work that led to the charter change in 2006. In addition to those, kind of big efforts, been around the fund in other capacities, looked at a number of different drop proposals that have been prepared by the actuaries over the years, and also have been involved working with the city on strategies to deal with tax limitation measures that were approved by voters or had the threat of being approved by voters that could affect the ability to collect the Fpdr levy and to fund the pension and disability benefits. So we've done some work on that over the years as well. Fortunately, we can say is that citizen initiative process has been pretty dormant now for a number of years, which has kind of reduced that near-term threat that we were experiencing, seemed like every 2 years in the 1990s. Sam asked me to come and talk a little bit about the city's comprehensive annual financial report, or what we refer to as the CAFR, because that report is an important document that the council in particular uses to help understand the consequences of a lot of its financial activity. It's one of two key documents that the city considers or approves or adopts each year. One is the budget, and you're familiar with the Fpdr budget, and the city has its own budget then that it adopts the city council. The CAFR is the accounting version of that. It tells us what we've done in terms of our expenditures and the commitment of funds that we've made and how it affects the city's financial condition. It presents the city's financial statements using generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, that are promulgated by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB. Our financial information is recorded using either a modified accrual or a full accrual basis of accounting. We include a discussion, a management discussion analysis, which is probably the best part of the document that tells you what's really going on in terms of the city's financial activities. And it also has a lot of important statistical information and trend data that's a part of the CAFR. The good news for us for the CAFR that was published in December of 2014 for fiscal year ending 2014 is that we received from our external auditors, which is Moss Adams, an unmodified opinion as to the fairness and accuracy of the city's financial statements that have been prepared in accordance with GAAP. And that unmodified opinion is a very integral part of the city's AAA bond rating, which also affects the cost of borrowing for a lot of different programs of the city. So we're very proud of that rating, and the unmodified opinion is key to that. The city's CAFR document complies with state law, and we found in the last, for the last period ended 2014, is that our fund balances continue to grow, kind of a reflection of the general financial health of the city. And the city's CAFR is reviewed by the Government Finance Officers Association each year, and we have received their Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for 33 consecutive years. So from that standpoint of view, the document is a very sound document in terms of a summary of our financial health, but it also includes some very perplexing news. And this is part of the discussion I had with councils. How can all this stuff be going so well, but yet it looks like we have some major problems? And one of the things that we're struggling with from a presentation point of view is what's called the city's net position. Basically, its assets minus its liabilities equals its net position. And the city has two views when it produces its CAFR. One is a view of its governmental-wide activities. So things like the general fund and the transportation operating fund and the grants fund and liabilities like the FPDR liability are captured in this governmental activities view. And then there's a view for its business activities. So the water enterprise and the sewer enterprise and things like that are treated as a business activity. And the sum of those two is the total net position for the city. What we have seen over the last 10 years is that the net position for the city's governmental activities has been declining, and in fact declined again in 2014 by about $142 million. So right now, for the governmental activities for the city, our net position is only a positive $212 million. Our overall net position for the governmental-wide and business activities is about $2.3 billion. So what's causing that decline? What happens in terms of that decline in net position, in simple terms, is driven by three factors. If we issue bonds or incur a liability and we don't have an offsetting asset, that increases or decreases the net position. If we recognize non-cash expenses such as depreciation, but we don't replace assets on the same kind of basis, then our net position can decline as well. But the biggest thing affecting the decline in net position is the way in which we're obligated to report our pension or our OPEB type liabilities. So for example, right now on the city's balance sheet, we have $1.4 billion of FPDR's liability that's in that liability calculation, contributing to that overall governmental-wide net position of $212 million. This next year, for the fiscal year ending this year in June, we will be implementing a new GASB standard, which deals with pension accounting and reporting. It's called GASB 68. You may have heard of that. What that's going to require us to do is place all of the liability onto our balance sheet. And right now, the FPDR liabilities of almost $2.5 billion. So when we bring that onto the balance sheet, another $1 billion of negative value, net position is going to be negative for the governmental-wide, and it'll wipe out a large portion of the overall net position, even for the business activities of the city. So that seems to be, particularly perplexing and hard to understand. And one of the challenges is the fact that we have this unique pension system that we don't get value for. So on the one hand, the GASB standard requires us to acknowledge the value of that unfunded liability and place it on our balance sheet as a liability, but we get no credit whatsoever for the receivable that we're able to impose and collect every single year, and that's the tax levy.
Just going to ask you, so it's a recorded liability and nothing
We
recorded
get
on the
$0
asset side?
for that. So the key to it, and it's always been a riddle, how can the city be a AAA rated credit with this large unfunded liability? And since I started with the city, the liability, there's always been a liability, and it's grown, and it's gotten bigger when we changed the discount rate, and that on a present value basis makes the liability bigger. So, but nothing's really changed with our ability to fund it. And that's the unique issue and challenge that we have about describing why we're not a Chicago or an Illinois or other states and cities that are really troubled with their pension funding. And so the question from the Wall Street Journal reporter was, well, why isn't this keeping you up at night? And I go, there's a lot of things that keep me up at night. This isn't one of them. And the reason why is a set of reasons that I think are really important for us to understand. For a long time in the early 90s and before we reformed the system in 2005, I was really concerned about the stability of the funding plan for FPDR because we don't have assets like a traditional plan to help pay benefits. We just have this levy. And the levy is subject, and at that time was subject to a lot of challenges with citizen initiatives. And every time there was an initiative, we always had to be very careful about making sure that we maintain the ability to collect that. In fact, when Measure 47 passed and then 50 was the correcting legislation, it was very carefully constructed to make sure that that $2.80 per thousand was kept out of the restrictions of those tax limitation measures. But even with that, we have some unique challenges associated with the plan, and that is we only have the levy, and the levy kind of waxes and wanes in the capacity of that depending on the real estate. We're basically long one asset, and that's Portland real estate. So when the real estate market in Portland does very well, the rate per thousand that we have to collect each year, narrows down. We have more capacity above that. When we have a slowdown in the growth in real market value, we get closer to that limit. So it's really important that we control costs and that we have a strong enough growth in the real estate market to stay ahead of things to make sure we're fully funded. The reforms in 2006 were a careful balance. They were a balance between getting the plan on a more normal funding platform, which means paying benefits, the cost of those benefits when they're earned, not when they're paid, being able to take advantage of financial markets to help offset some of those costs over time, but to do it in a way that didn't break the levee, didn't risk the levee, and didn't impose an undue burden on those citizens that would be paying for basically 2 sets of pension costs for a period of time. Careful balancing, and that was always the challenge through the 90s and other reform efforts, is how do we fix this problem with staying inside the boundaries that we have to operate within. So it was very carefully constructed. And what I've seen now is that the work of that 2006 effort and the reform efforts then is performing exactly as we planned. We knew costs were going to be higher for a period of time, and they are. They're actually trending lower than projected. They will peak and then drop, and when that happens, capacity on the levee gets bigger. You know, the real estate market took a pretty good hit in 2008 following that. Now we're on a very big, strong upswing again. The most recent levee capacity study by Milliman shows that only under a very limited set of circumstances would the levee be inadequate, and looking out over the next 20 years or so. So really that risk period narrows each and every year. We get closer to about 2038 when costs peak, and then we have more capacity each and every year thereafter. The most important thing from my point of view is that because of the adequacy of the levee, because of the reforms that have been put into place and the pattern of those reforms and how they're playing out, is that there's not an impairment of the city's general fund to pay those liabilities when due. And that's really the key, is that as long as there's not an impairment, then even though we don't have assets backing the claims of the future pension disability costs, we have a funding plan that's not going to create a problem for us in terms of other services. So part of my job, part of my mission of my bureau is to advise council on long-term fiscal health. And so this is something we've talked with the council and we'll want to bring back to them. And what are indicators that we can be looking at for the FPDR fund that would tell us whether we have to be, we're green light, we're flashing caution, or maybe there's flashing red. So what would those things look like? The things that that are important to me is what I call revenue coverage. We'd look at the present value of the cost. What's the present value of the maximum revenue stream? And if that's equal to 1.2 or 1.3 or 1.5 times the liability, probably not a problem in the aggregate. What's the trend in real market value? As real market value slows down and growth goes below, maybe drops below inflation, or AV gets closer to RMV and those kinds of things in our tax system, those are warning signs. But we can see that coming. It doesn't happen overnight. What's trends in underlying costs? Again, if those things begin to spike for some reason, we'll see those before they become a large problem, and maybe can adopt changes or adapt to that or plan for that if necessary. And then, one of the things we want to look at, what's the actual rate versus the projected rate? What's that ratio? And how much headroom do we have in there, even considering compression losses and things like that? But those are the kinds of metrics that we can start talking to council about, talking with you about, making sure that we have, in effect, an early warning system if we need to begin understanding where we might have a problem. The kinds of things that are catastrophic are things like a tax law change. We usually see those coming, months in advance, but if they are approved, in the worst case, they can create, a catastrophic problem for us. That hasn't happened in the past, and like I said before, those efforts seem to be dormant, but that's probably our biggest risk. The other underlying economic factors and things like that, we've seen this system work through ebbs and flows. We have a pretty good sense of how it's working, and we know that once we get beyond about 2035, 2036, and that time period and beyond, that the capacity that we have under the system that we're running now is going to be greater than it ever would have been if we had stayed on the old system that we were on. So from that standpoint, the reforms are working, the risk is being reduced, and that's why I sleep, like a baby at night, except for all the other things I'm worried about. Going forward, we know GASB 68 is going to have a big impact. It's going to get a lot of press around that. We're not alone. I was out to dinner last night with some folks from the GFOA that we're doing some training here in Portland, and one of the folks that leads the accounting effort for the GFOA mentioned that, well, don't feel bad, misery loves company, because there's going to be a lot of governments with negative net position as a result of the GASB standard. The good thing about us is that we actually have a very good story to tell about the reason why we're negative and the way in which we're going to fund our plan. And because of that, I have every expectation that it's not going to be a financial problem for us, and there's no reason why we won't expect to continue the AAA bond rating and do the things that are really important for the city council and for the citizens of the city. So I'd be happy to answer questions that you may have.
Question? Yeah, so it sounds like the credit rating agencies are understanding the story right now as to the present value of our revenue stream and the importance of that. You see that changing at all with the implementation of GASB 68 with this additional $1 billion, that they're going to suddenly see it differently, or you still think we're going to get credit for what we
No,
do?
no, I don't think there'll be, one, it's not a surprise, they know it's coming. We've educated the rating agencies over the years. As I mentioned, that's the reason why, even with this funny number, we're a AAA rated city. We've had a lot of discussions. Moody's actually has went through a change in the way they view pension liabilities, and for a while, they were putting us into the box of like every other plan, and it was a concern that they may downgrade the city's credit. But once we got a new group of folks educated about that, they realized this is a very unique plan. You can't treat it like other kinds of defined benefit programs, and because of that, didn't result in any impairment of our rating. I don't expect that to be the case now either.
And similar question, it might be the same answer. So even with that AAA rating, are we as a city paying more for debt than we would be were this not on the books?
I don't believe that to be the case
Really?
at all. No, the rating, when we look at our bond pricings, and we don't issue a lot of AAA rated debt, where the city has about $3.5 billion worth of bonds outstanding, and there's probably a couple $100 million that might have the AAA rating that are paid for with taxes. We also have AAA bond rating on the city's water bonds, so there's probably more than that in the aggregate. We compare our pricings against national market indices and consistently perform at or above the rating category. So sometimes we're almost like a quadruple A rating, and the pricing's so strong for the city's bonds when we bring them to market. So I don't see any impairment whatsoever based on this liability. And we've looked at this in sold bonds. We've had a AAA bond rating since 1974. So I've seen no evidence that there's been ever any concern about the way the liability may impact our bond pricings, even though we have the AAA rating.
Any more questions?
Just one more. You're probably aware Milliman is performing a tax levy analysis. So is it every 2 years we're getting that?
Yeah.
And it's been my understanding that they're talking to your office about all these assumptions. And so if there's anything more to do there in terms of getting together on that, and because all those economic and demographic things, we maybe can't forecast tax law changes, but things like that, we should encourage that.
Yeah.
No, we've had good relations working with the city budget office, with the Milliman analysts, with our folks in our group. I know from my own experience personally that the relationship with the fund's actuary has never, there were times when it wasn't as good, and it was more difficult to, I think, be able to ask questions and get kind of a common analysis that we all could agree to. That really has changed and improved considerably, and we have an excellent working relationship with Milliman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good report.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
Okay, Sam and Nancy, it looks like. Talk to us about the disability process audit.
Good afternoon, Nancy Hartline, Fpdr Financial Manager. As Kim mentioned earlier, what we have here is a companion piece to the disability program evaluation, in which we hired a consultant to review our disability payment processes with a view to assessing what risk we may be bearing from being dependent on spreadsheets from calculating benefits and tracking other changes. So in the report you have here, the consultant found that payments are timely and accurate, but some other tasks are delayed. And so she recommended that we make the Fpdr database our primary repository for payment-related information. And once this is done, begin to eliminate our spreadsheets. So we're now in the process of making better use of the database's current technology and making enhancements to the database for payment processing and reporting. So some of these changes are simply to better use the current database, such as using it for tracking the next expected pay increase for members on disability who are not at top step of the pay range or have not reached maximum longevity. Other changes simply increase the efficiency with which we can use the database now that we've got some experience with the new platform. And then finally, we are adding some new functionality, including tracking time that has been pended by the claims analysts because they don't have the information they need to approve the time in a pay period. And then we're easily able to pay the pended time once the analysts approve it. And we're also adding overpayment and recovery tracking for disability to the database. So once we complete these changes next month, we'll then turn to working on eliminating the spreadsheets, and we'll include a summary of our results in the state of Fpdr in September. Any questions?
So eliminating the spreadsheets and going to a single module that's
For example, right now, overpayment tracking and pended time tracking is all done by spreadsheets. And so now we can just enter it in the database and it will be there. One of the concerns was with all these spreadsheets, the learning curve for somebody new coming in to this job would be very steep. So now by simplifying things and getting things into the common platform of the database, it should be much easier both to document and train a new person.
Thank you, Nancy. Who gets to talk to us about 2015 legislative session?
I guess I'll do that. So this legislative session has had much less to say about PERS than the 2013 one, but there are still a few active bills that are of interest. Senate Bill 370 would allow domestic relations orders to assign death benefits to a former spouse if the member dies before retirement. Currently, as you know, a former spouse is not eligible for a pension benefit until the member reaches his or her earliest retirement date. So in the event of a pre-retirement death, this change would allow a former spouse to receive the pre-retirement death benefit. The increased cost to Fpdr would be the requirement to pay a death benefit that was not otherwise payable. For example, when a member doesn't have a current spouse who would be eligible to receive the pre-retirement death benefit, we would now be asked to pay a benefit that under the current charter we would not pay. This would be a rare event, so we haven't estimated a financial impact for this. OPSRP in the PERS system is also affected by this bill, so the legislature will be weighing the policy benefit for the former spouse against higher OPSRP costs.
Nancy, on this and the other ones that impact our plan, do you know if the city has taken a position on these bills?
Our position on this one is officially neutral because we rewrote sections of it, because if it was going to pass, we wanted to make sure that it fit into our plan and it was administrable. So I think Ken was part of that, as well as Nancy and myself. I think we've been against it because it adds a new benefit that we have, but we came out and said, if this seemed to have a lot of steam behind it, so we better get it written correctly so we can administer it and not have to end up going back to court again, which is what they're trying to avoid.
On the next one.
Okay,
by the way.
so the next bill, House Bill 2836, would allow Fpdr 3 members who are an OPSRP to receive service credit for periods of service occupational disability if they return to work. Now, if an Fpdr 3 member is out on disability for more than half a month, he or she receives no service credit even upon return to active duty. So the change would make service crediting for these Fpdr 3 members disability time more like Fpdr 2 members crediting. As a result, it would, of course, increase Fpdr's cost for OPSRP contributions that we pay. So again, the legislature will be balancing the policy benefit against higher PERS contribution rates.
So you say it'll increase the benefits and contribution costs. Can you explain to me why you
Well, the
think that?
benefit would be the enhanced service accrual for the Fpdr 3 members who are out on a service-connected or occupational disability claim and then return to active duty. So right now, as I said, if you're off on disability for more than half a month, your service accrual stops. And it only resumes when you return to active duty.
So, and I could see that just on the forefront, that might make sense. But if I look at a person who, people retire out of here. They don't quit, they don't leave. So they plan their retirement, and you say, and this would affect, let's say I have 25 years and I show up and say, I'm ready to retire. You say, well, you actually only have 24 years left. So you'd have to work another year. So
Well,
you're
in
gonna
this
have
case,
to-
I'd say you have to talk to PERS because if you're an FPDR3 member, you're not
well,
retiring
the
through
point
the
that you
FPDR
could tell me
system.
that, right?
Yeah.
If I wasn't the right age.
Yeah.
So I'd have to work another year, right? So that would require the city to pay contributions possibly 25 years out, a whole nother year at more money than it would if they were paying, let's say they got hurt their first year and they didn't get credit for that time. The way the people in the fire department, I think the police department, they figure out their retirement to what fits what their lifestyle is going to be. And if they have it in their mind, they do the calculation, then they show up and say, oh, you don't have this time. They're just going to stay longer, is what they're going to do. And it's going to cost the city more money at the end than it will at the beginning. So I don't understand why it would increase costs. I think it would increase costs what we're doing right now.
Well, yes, it would increase short-term costs, and you raise an interesting point about whether the net impact over
Who's
time would
paying the
be
bill,
significant or not.
Payroll versus FPDR payment, or versus.
It's all coming out of FPDR.
officer.
Because the payments that go to PERS come out of FPDR.
I mean, if the member has to return to active duty for a few more years.
Then we'd
Is
be
that what you're
paying the
saying?
contributions
Well, if I
for
get
that
hurt
service.
and I'm
Yeah.
out for a year, in my 4th year, I don't get any credit during that year.
Correct, under
So,
tier 3 only.
Yeah,
Under tier
I
2
get
you
it.
do.
I do, but the
Yes, you
people
do.
after me don't. But, and the same thing works in PERS too,
Yeah.
except for the officer people. So I'm just trying to think this through. I don't think our member's not gonna say, oh, well, I'm just gonna retire then. Though they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna make up their 6 months or a year or 2 years by working 2 more years, what they're gonna do. And it's gonna cost the city more money, is what it's gonna cost. Because our members don't just,
Yeah, it's higher salary.
Leave.
What you're saying is you're getting higher salary for that extra year.
well, it's
than you would
25
for-
years later too.
Yeah, so I mean, it's
It's
a higher salary,
the-
so higher PERS contribution.
So, and then at the end, it says, it may also reduce incentive to return to work quick. Don't you guys have controls that stop that? And this is not gonna increase somebody to stay off work?
I think we had some discussion here. We don't seem to have a problem, because we have, for FPDR2, quite a liberal credit. I mean, you get basically day-for-day credit for doing it. We don't see that as a disincentive of people returning to work, but the workers' compensation, the rest part of the city felt that it would be
It doesn't mean it's abused, but it is. It's an incentive not to return to work. If you're earning accrual towards your retirement when you're at home getting workers' comp payments, you now have an incentive not to return to work. That doesn't mean it's abused, but, and
Yeah,
that's.
well, I don't think it
that's
would be
bad.
used either, would it? I mean, it's based on your
So it
condition
basically-
and your doctor and,
I think that's, because I personally don't think that that's a big issue, because we do not see that as being an incentive for people not going back to work. You
Oh,
saw
I
on our disability how we are
Forgotten your whole
successful.
former life, Hutchison.
Yeah, so I don't see this as a disincentive for it. But there, depending upon how you look at it, is potential for more costs to FPDR one way or another with it. But,
I think
I can tell you, most of
Jason's
our members they don't even know this is even there. And so they're not staying off work or coming back to work
Yeah.
because of this, because they don't even know this exists.
Well, I think your point is fair. I mean, there's a cost on one side or the other,
Yeah.
either way. But what this does is unwinds one of the reforms that was adopted for Tier 3. It makes it mirror Tier 2, which was part of the charter
well,
change.
there is one thing that doesn't. This is only for the time, yet they
Right.
have to return to work.
You
So
have to come back
you
eventually.
rarely are seeing people, usually you can use sort of a year. Most people who are disabled for less than a year return to work. When they hit the year, the return to work drops dramatically at it. So you're only looking for a narrow window. This is not doing what we do with FPDR2, which is you continue while you're receiving disability benefits accruing up until retirement.
Okay.
This is only for that point up until they return to work.
Good.
So if they fail to return to work under PERS, they don't get any retirement credit. It's only for that short window of which they are out and then return to work. So to me, it's not that big
quite
of a
as-
cost. It's nowhere near what we offer under FPDR two.
And has the city taken a stance on this?
I think it was neutral pretty much. I don't know what this, hard part is I know what other bureaus have said, but I don't know what the city's official position is. I would imagine it's neutral. I think there's a couple bureaus that have.
Sorry, Ken, for our next board meeting, these bills that are listed as having an FPDR impact, could you, I'd like to know if the city officially submitted a statement or gave testimony on these bills.
Okay, we can find that out. As you know, the city prepares a legislative package with its priorities, and I don't believe any of these bills are on that list of priorities. So the official city position would be, as Sam said, potentially neutral. But again, each bureau, including our office, weighs in. And of course, we have the ability during the legislative session to flag something and grab the government relations office and tell them this is of grave importance to us, and let them know.
And also, we just ran to the point in the legislature where most bills had to come out of committee and be presented to the floor of the respective. So some of these I've gone through did not make it to the floor. So it's not to say that they can't get revived, but some of these, the chances of them coming up to the top are pretty low.
The reason I ask, Sam, is the city showed up on some insurance issues totally unrelated to city business down in Salem this year, much to the chagrin of everybody in the insurance industry. So I'm looking to see if they're consistent with insurance bills that impact their bottom line.
So on page 2, there are several active workers' compensation bills, which didn't have much activity last year, excuse me, last session, but none of them have any impact on FPDR, so I'm not going to spend your time on that. And then finally, on page 3, Senate Bill 496 may improve FPDR members' access to the Public Safety Memorial Fund's benefits.
And do we know the status, the ones that haven't had a work session yet, what you're just alluding to?
The ones that are not marked as active are done
Okay,
for the
good.
session unless
I
they're
gotcha.
revived by special means.
Okay.
And I will say about workers' compensation, they're not impacted, because we've gone through the language and they do not impact us, but I monitor them, because I would imagine we're going to get some pressure on some of these to add them to FPDR. So I just take a look at them, and I'm not seeing anything even out of that that's coming through. And to be honest with you, if you can guess which one of the workers' compensation laws is likely to most go through, is revised attorney fees. The rest of them are all probably going to be somewhat pared down or not make it further. So I thought it was interesting which one got the priority in workers' comp. Anyway, that's my editorial
Number
comment.
of lobbyists sometimes.
Nancy, did you do 3495? I didn't hear that one. The first page, the third one?
Oh, there's been some confusion about when, for an OPSERT member, the payroll contributions to PERS need to start. The city, under the current rules, was not doing it quite right, and for I think of a year ago, they corrected it and started doing it per the letter. But this bill would simply make it less confusing. There was a mixture of earned and received, and it just wasn't clear before. So now it would simply be that the contributions start with the full pay period after 6 months of service. It's simply for the contributions. It doesn't affect the service accrual calculation at all. It's simply when the contributions start.
So, and what are we doing right now? So this is the IAP and the defined benefit
Well,
portion?
yes, okay, I guess you're right. That would be it would affect the IAP
So you're not
contributions.
putting the IAP until after 6 months?
Well, you're not a member of PERS for 6 months.
So that's what you're currently doing?
Right, but
Okay.
there was just like a few days, if a pay date included some time prior to 6 months and some time after, there was some confusion about how to treat that. So now it's just the first full pay period after the 6-month anniversary.
And that's consistent with the rest of the city and state as far as the PERS OPSERT members?
Well, this would affect the city's process as well as everybody in the state.
Yeah.
Of how to do it, yeah.
Okay, thanks. And was this something that the city presented to the legislature, or?
There has been a big work effort at PERS about how to address this issue. There may be payments due for prior periods, or PERS may decide that this was such a global issue and take it out of contingency. So we don't know the outcome there.
So I take it the city is, they want this to pass?
I believe so, because it really clarifies things and makes it much easier to administer.
Okay. Thank you.
So have either of you been asked to testify in support or opposition to any of these?
No, we have made no trips to Salem.
I think the only one that we did was House Bill 370, the three of us.
Is that,
Well, we had a
That was the
conference
first
call,
one.
but
Well,
not,
first-
we didn't testify, yeah.
Well, we didn't testify, but we submitted this is the first one, which is domestic
and you were
relation
able to get
orders.
it amended, you said?
Yeah,
your
amended
side.
so it made sense and fit in with
Great.
our plan.
Okay, thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Yes. On the legislative update? Okay.
Thank you. For the record, Alan Fershon, President of the Portland Firefighters Association. Just a couple comments on some of the bills that you were talking about, and I'll just start with 2836. And one of the things on there that is in there is that's not a FPDNR bill, that's an OPSRP bill. So even though you're listening to it as the FPDNR board, all members of OPSRP in the city will have that bill passed. So even though you're sitting here just with police and fire, whether you're a custodian or whether you're in the mayor's office, if you're a PERS employee level 3, that is a bill that pertains to you, not just FPDNR. Secondly, on the website, and I just got on while I was listening to you, and it says pretty clearly on here, revenue impact of proposed legislation on it is a notice of no revenue impact. Legislative Revenue Office has reviewed the proposed legislation and determined that it has no impact on state or local revenues analyzed by this office. And so that would be, open for discussion on whether it would be a cost or a cost neutral. Obviously, they feel that there is no impact on that.
LRO analyses are from the state general fund only, so it wouldn't have included City of Portland or FPD.
So when they say local revenues analyzed, okay.
Did it say local revenues were analyzed as well?
Yep.
Good, okay. No, I think what Jason said earlier is probably right. There's
Right.
a cost to the system, but it's just moving from one side to the other.
Yep.
Is your organization lobbying for that bill?
We wouldn't have we would go neutral on that bill, yeah, our organization.
You know who's behind it?
I know that the State Firefighters Council is having some discussion on that. Yeah. And so that was actually the main bill that I want to talk to. I think that Senate Bill 370 relating to that alternate payee, again, neutral on that. We have watched that bill, but I think it's, you have further discussion on alternate payee further in here. I think it's interesting to watch, it go back and forth on that, but we're neutral on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to move to item 4, response to questions asked by citizens at the July 27th board meeting. So Sam, I'm going to let you run this, and then
Okay.
I suspect we have a couple signups. Don't go far, Ken.
Okay, so what we had is some questions that were coming from, as you can see here in this case, from Mr. Stevens and Mr. Walters, and that had been asked several times. I wanted to try to put some answers down on paper so we can address them. And so if we go through this, you want to clarify or have more information, let me know and we can discuss it. So the first one was a question by Mr. Stevens about schedule change and canceling of board meetings. Were they in compliance with the Oregon meeting law? Mr. McGarr met with Mr. Stevens after, and the answer in the memo was from Ken McGarr. So basically, Oregon meetings law does not control schedule of the meetings or canceling. It's just basically how some of the meetings are run. And during the March meeting, I didn't address this here, but during the last meeting, there was Mr. Stevens had some questions about timely publishing the board meeting announcement and agenda. So I wanted to share with you how we get our board agenda out. So the Wednesday before every board meeting, we send out an email to a very large list of people. You all are, as board members, are on that email list. And we know for a fact that several of the people that receive that then cascade that email down. So this, because we get emails from people that are, I think, 2 or 3 times down. So this email does get broadcast wide through a lot of the members and retirees. We also post that agenda on the website, the Fpdr website. And Thursday before the meeting, we post the board packet, which is the booklet you have in front of you, gets posted on the website. And then on Friday, we do publish the full agenda in the Daily Journal of Commerce. And so you can see here, this is almost an exact smaller version, but duplicate of the agenda that was sent to you and posted on our website. I think this is the standard journal that most meetings, city council, and others in the city post their agendas on. So we do give plenty of notice out there for people. There was a reference to Tualatin Valley Fire of what they do, so they're meeting tonight, so I tried to follow through for what they've done on their posting. Well, this is Fpdr's, our Tualatin Valley Fire's public notice in the Oregonian that came out last Friday. There are a couple little points in there of its agenda, but is not the full agenda. And interestingly, I went on at noontime, and they have not yet published their agenda or board meeting documents for tonight's meeting. I thought they published them about a week before, but at this time they have not. So we definitely get our information out there. It's fairly within the standard of what we do with that. Then for question 2, which was Mr. Stevens asking questions about what are some options of pursuing the overpayment situation and maybe getting some compensation back. That was requesting how to go through the city's Department of Risk Management. That question is best answered by the mayor's staff or city hall. That's outside of Fpdr, because Fpdr has decided, there's nothing that we can do for it. So I am respectfully deferring that question into the mayor's office. And I know he's aware of that question, but there's nothing here at Fpdr we can do to respond to that. Mr. Stevens said, following along that same lines, I had questions about PERS forgiving an overpayment recently they had. And that was, so I looked up on the PERS board decisions, their minutes, and in July 25, 2014, PERS did make a decision to, what you want to call forgive pension benefit calculation overpayment impacting several thousand of their members. In the memo I put down, Fpdr is not PERS. We have different rules. We have different, they have a statute, we have a charter, and we have totally different sets of rules. What binds PERS does not bind us, and what binds us does not bind PERS. So we can't proceed handling overpayments the same way as PERS. And a little bit that I didn't put in the memo is how PERS specifically handled this one in July of 2014 is they went to what they have is a reserve fund that is given to them statutorily. So in the statutes, they can take employer contributions, a little bit of it, and put it into this fund. And then in certain situations, they can dip into that fund to resolve issues having to deal with the broader PERS fund. So what they did here was not technically forgive the overpayment. They elected not to go to the retirees to get the overpayment back. They elected to go to the employers fund that the employers have established and get the overpayment back. So the Fpdr fund, asset fund, came out neutral. So they did collect the overpayment, but they had an option of a different fund in which to collect it from. Fpdr does not have that option. We do not have a reserve fund that we can keep or retain for that purpose.
Does that reserve fund come from the members?
No, it comes from the employers. They shave a little bit of the part of the employer contribution feeds that fund, and it can only be used for very specific things. So it is guided by statute.
I think there's an interesting corollary here, which is if you've heard Mr. Downhour talk often about our recoupment of our overpayment, the goal being that the overpayment has to be recouped by the plan somehow, either from employer assets or from the people who were overpaid. And of course, we don't have employer contributions into this fund, and that was part of the calculus that went into the IRS decision. In the PERS system, aside from this reserve fund where they can make up the difference from that reserve, they also have the ability by statute to recoup the overpayments from the members automatically in ORS 238.715, I believe. So they have different tools in their arsenal to deal with the situation than we did back in 2008, I think it was, or whenever, 2011, sorry.
Okay. And I did want to make up the point, we did approach the IRS for forgiving the overpayment, and the IRS shot that down. And so we were able to try to negotiate a different level with, and we had to get IRS's approval. That's simply because, as Ken said, we just don't have the tools available to us that the PERS has by statute. So I think we did the best that we could at that point. The last question was by Mr. Walters. He had questions about.
Let me interrupt
Okay,
on
go
that
ahead.
point. So Lauren Downhauer, outside trust counsel, Ken just mentioned me. IRS about a month ago, or actually 2 months ago, issued a clarification to their corrective procedures and said there are some situations when, asking for the money back just isn't a practicable solution. But they said in the absence of getting it back from the member, the employer's got to put it back in. And so, again, IRS has basically formalized what they told us back when this was up for issue with them. But so no change, but that's just the lay of the land for qualified retirement plans like this one. Thank you.
Okay. And then the last one was Mr. Walters was asking the impact of having certain properties in the city that were on urban renewal properties or tax abatement, what that do to our tax levy. And in short, it really does nothing to us. I mean, it's a non-issue for how we calculate our levy or how much we collect. We need a certain size, we need a certain amount of money, we can get that certain amount of money. And if the pie is smaller, our piece of the pie is bigger. If the pie gets bigger, which it is now, our piece of pie is smaller, but we always get the same amount of pie every time that we need for our business. So that really didn't impact us.
Well, I think the question might have been in dire straits if we came down to when we're really having a problem where we're hitting the levy. Would it have an impact then?
The feeling was no.
Okay.
I mean, it just wasn't that much in how they.
They can't measure it because you'd have to put an estimate on what the whole urban district did to property values in the first place. Pearl being a great example, probably raised property values more than it did in terms of takeaway. So it's hard to say.
And I think, as Ken pointed out, if we ever get to that point to where we are stressing the levy and approaching the 2.8, we will have a lot of discussions on the impact of that, how we're going to get that money. So that's an issue that, fortunately, with the most recent actuarial study, doesn't look like it's going to occur. But when we get to that point, there will be a lot of discussions, and everything will be brought back on the table to discuss at that time. Fortunately, that'll be probably about 20 to 30 years out, so it'll be somebody else's problem in the future. But it does not look like it's going to be a. Yeah. But I think it's going to be that peak that we see in about 2030 to 2035. But fortunately, right now, that doesn't look like it's going to be an issue. Okay.
Mr. Del Stevens and Mr. Joe Jankowski.
Want me to go first, or you want to go? Del Stevens, retired Portland Fire. It's going to seem a little disjointed now because the issues have already been presented, and I know I'm going to respond to them 10 minutes later, but I will do so to the best of my ability. Those issues that were brought up and have been pursued as far as finding a way to address them, I don't believe that they've been carried to their full completion. And as was pointed out, it's been referred to the mayor's office about the overpayment on the COLA. And excuse me, on through use of the COLA, the overpayment on the pension fund. When the pension board is brought into court, they oftentimes say, well, we're independent. And other times, the city will say, the pension board works for us, it's part of the city. And so I would submit that in this case, where the pension board decided to act and take the overpayment out of the members' COLA, which was illegal and was pointed out by Greg Hartman, the former union president, the attorney. Prior to them doing so, they went ahead and did it. And in the process of working through that, when the attorney represented the members, and then they went to a class action lawsuit, it was pointed out the city was wrong. They shouldn't have done it. And the decisions that were made were cumulative. They were wrong over and over and over, and it resulted in a lot of people being impacted by it. And the people that decided to pay it originally first were penalized because they were trying to do the right thing because there was an overpayment. And I was the first one to do so. And I actually talked to Nancy Hartline, and I sent a letter to her recalling our conversation, asking if I could pay it as a lump sum because I did not want the pension fund to be discredited or unqualified by IRS, okay? And I felt it was the right thing to do. And subsequently, other people took that same action. And those people were left out of the class action lawsuit. And I asked the mayor about it. I said, I'm asking you to do the right thing. If people are taking the lead to correct a mistake that was made, and then they're left out of the settlement, I said, it's wrong. It's the wrong message. And he agreed. He said, I'm troubled by it. I don't like it either. And he said, we've talked about it. And he said, we just don't know how to do it. And several months went by, and he told me they'd explored all the options, and he said, there's just nothing we can do. My hands are tied. Well, my time was over at that meeting. I couldn't talk anymore because of the structure of the meetings. So I had to wait 2 more months to come to the meeting and say that I'm here to tell you that I'm going to untie your hands. There is a way to do it. And if you think it is wrong, it can be corrected. And I said the Bureau of Risk Management is available to indemnify the city when bad decisions are made. The pension board made bad decisions when they took that illegally out of the members' pensions. When they did not let the people who had paid originally be part of the class action lawsuit. And the mayor asked me at the time, he said, would you like to be part of the class action lawsuit? And I said, not by myself. I said, everybody that paid should also be part of that. They didn't act on that. When they had the administrative law hearing, and Judge, now I forget her name. Anyway, the lady who was the administrative law judge, she let me speak even though I had no standing in the case. But she acknowledged the fact that I was part of the larger group. And she was troubled. And she said, isn't there a way to make this work? And I said, well, the mayor said that he would like to see us part of the same group. And she asked the attorneys for the city and the pension board sitting there if they had any instructions about that, and they said they did not. Even after the mayor had said that he wanted it to be corrected and he felt that it was the right thing to do. Okay, so now we're getting down to the point here that it hasn't been corrected, and the head of the fund says that it is out of the bounds of the funds to do it. They cannot do it, and they're held to a different standard. But then I read in the paper where PERS covered the whole thing with an $8 million payment for the members, and I find out that they treated their members differently. And so I asked about that because I felt that it was a clear departure of the way you treat your members, okay? And you know, we've been told that they're held to a different standard, that they have money that's in a fund that comes from the employer, okay? I would submit the pension board is part of the city. The city is the employer. The city is the responsible party to make this right, and the Bureau of Risk Management is the appropriate place that it should be done, and they have the discretion to say, yes, they were not treated right. We want our people to be treated just as well as the people in PERS, because they're reciprocal types of pensions, and they should honor their members the same way. And so I just want to say that this issue is quite important to the people that paid, and it signifies something about the way we are as a organization and the way we treat our people. And I just ask that you use your positions to encourage the mayor to follow through on this and make sure that the Bureau of Risk Management addresses the issue. They have the ability to do it. It's not illegal. They can do it, and it corrects an injustice that occurred. Okay, that's the end of that.
Have you addressed city council on this issue?
I haven't met with
Our
city
attorneys are
council.
giving us the opinion that it's out of our hands.
Correct.
And so and you talk about the Bureau of
But
Risk
I've talked-
Management, we don't deal with them here either. So
no.
I think that would be the next step.
Well, I've talked to the mayor, and the mayor told me that he would personally talk to the Bureau of Risk Management. And so I'm waiting to him to report back, because I told him, I said, I'm going to hold you to that, Mayor, because I said that's important. It needs to be done thoroughly, and he agreed. Okay, so we're waiting for that, and the pension board has referred it to the mayor's office. Is that right? The issue is written and referred to the mayor's office?
I deferred the question to the mayor's office.
Okay, so I just wanted to address the other side of that issue, okay?
But you did hear, Del, that first of all, we're not held to a different standard. We have different remedies available to us.
Correct.
Because we're a different entity from PERS. And you also heard that this board has no ability to do anything about this. So I think, in my opinion, we're done with this topic. This board is done with it. There's nothing for us to do. I mean, if you have a specific request for us, I can go talk to the mayor, but for the board itself, for this council, what is it that you want us to do? Because what I'm hearing is there's nothing for us to do anymore.
Well, I think you should support the request that an inequity occurred because of bad decisions that were made, and people were affected, and they were harmed. People were harmed. They need to be made whole. And I think the board should support that. That's all I'm asking.
You've asked this at least half a dozen times, and we're done with it. And again, I'm going to correct your characterization. It was an overpayment. You were not due those funds that you were paid, and we appreciate that you did the right thing and paid it back. What I don't like is that a class of people were able to use the legal process to get it basically waived, and good people like you ended up paying your bill. But we didn't break the law to charge you for an overpayment. It was the method of collection. It was basically a technicality. There were other ways we could have collected it. Remember, we were advised by the union's attorneys to take each of you to court. We didn't want to do that. That would have been painful for you. So again, this trustee does not agree that you're owed money. I think we need to move on. If you want to go to the mayor's office, he's down the hall. You can wait.
Well, I'm waiting for the mayor to respond back.
Let's not address this anymore in this venue.
I object to you telling me I can't address it, because I have the freedom of speech in this country, and you're not going to tell me I can't raise an issue, so don't try to do that.
I certainly can.
No, you
I'm
cannot.
chairing this meeting, and
If you want to call the police and have me removed from the chamber, you may do so, but I will not
asking you
be
to
held.
respect other people's time.
I respect your time, but you have to respect my viewpoint.
And I have many times on this exact issue, as have my fellow
Well,
trustees. We're asking
the issue is not adjudicated yet. It's not done.
this board, it's what all three of us have told you.
Talk to the mayor. Just talk to the mayor.
No, I'm just waiting for the resolution on it, that's all.
The mayor is down the hall.
Well, it's not inappropriate for me to comment on Mr. Hutchinson giving his report on the issues that were occurred in that. And I had signed up to speak, and so I'm only doing what was allowed under the parameters of the board, okay?
What I'm asking you is, can we agree this is the last time you bring this issue to this?
No, I
board?
will not agree to that.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. The next issue was, that you commented about, was the announcement for the meetings. I would just like to say that a lot of the older people in our pension system don't have computers. They're not available online to go and read the agenda or when the date's going to be, but they are interested. And don't you think that the board should reach out to them beyond just the internet and posting it online? If they don't have a computer, it's not available to them. And the Daily Chamber of Commerce is read primarily by government employees and business people. And it leaves those people out that are disabled or retired. And I just would like to see a better dissemination of the meeting notices and the agenda. And I had, truthfully, about 4 inches of announcements from different agencies, whether it was Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, whether it was Clackamas Fire District 1, whether it was Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, whether it was Bureau of Planning, whether it was Forestry Department. They all published their meetings and their agendas. And it should be published in a place where people read it. And I would suggest, even though the readership is less, the Oregonian is the right place to do it. I don't see why we don't want to do that. Why is it such an imposition to publish a date for a meeting and an agenda? Why is that a problem?
This has historically not been done that way. I mean, this has been adequate.
So Del, I hear what you're saying. We do publish the agenda in many, you're suggesting that we do it in the Oregonian. Is that your request?
I think that would be the likely place that most people would refer to, yeah. It's just a comment. I'm not trying to be imposing on this, but there's a lot of people that don't come to the meetings because they don't know when the meetings are. Wouldn't it be nice to have a representative from, a percentage of retired people that show up at these meetings and participate? That would be very nice. But we have to encourage it and facilitate it to make it happen. Okay, I guess that was the 2 points that I wanted to refer to.
Can we let Joe go first, and then maybe you can come up after?
I kind of disagree with Bill saying here. Kathy sends me an email, and I'm kind of well, I retired as kind of I'm Douglas Paul, retired fire. Kind of halfway liaison between the pension and the retirees. She sends me an email. I send it to Val Saul, which is the secretary of our association. He sends it out. And there's approximately 600 members that get the email.
Thank you for doing that.
I sent it out. I don't know if you're on the list or not, but
I know it's here.
yeah, but it comes out, so at least 600. And another thing, concerned, they're not concerned. I mean, I could use a bad word, say they don't give about the meetings. The ones that are concerned are here, or we feed them the information. So I think the information is getting out. All the meetings were first year, there was a memo out, or I think a letter to the retirees, I got it. It had all the meetings for the year. And all you have to do is put it in your phone or put it on your calendar, and you know. You want to find out.
That part I did know about, which concerns me a little bit because we did cancel a meeting.
Well,
I'd
some get
hate to have
canceled. I got something
retirees
on my
show up
phone.
here
Yeah.
if we're not here based on that. So we'll
But-
try to be better on that.
I think they're doing a good job of getting everybody. You can't hand feed them all.
Thank you.
So if they're interested, they can find out. If they don't, kind of care less. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad Doug said that, because I was planning to do that with the retirees, get an email out to them, and so I'm glad he's doing that already. So I'm not on that list, unfortunately. It's just for people that made that final step, even though I thought I did already. Anyway, I mean, one comment on this here. I know that Fpdr is following the charter, and you require to file a charter. I know for years, since '91, and they retired people on disability retirement. When they reached that 30 year, he said, if you're on disability retirement, you go. Now, just recently, that all changed, where they're saying, no, you should get a pension retirement now. And I know, for my case, I've been on Medicare for 7 years now, I think, and I'm on Medicare not through Fpdr, it's from my previous fire department. I earned my 40 quarters from my previous job before I came here, because we're not covered by Social Security when I came in '85. '86, they started covering them because the law changed. So I've been on Medicare, but if I'm transitioning to a pension all of a sudden, and my status changed to a pension now, that negates my disability status with Social Security. Social Security used my medical separation. They used the charter language that said after 5 years you're gone. They used all that language for me to validate my claim and to approve my claim. Even though it was separate from FPDR, they used the language of the City of Portland to approve my claim for Medicare. And they looked at the dates I left, and then they waited a certain time period to say, okay, now you're eligible. Now you've been off work long enough. Now you're eligible to get this Medicare. And I started when I was 57. You don't want to get that until you're 65. I started at 57 because of a disability, and because my doctors, 3 different doctors, said permanent disability for progressive illness that continues to progress. Hopefully, now with treatment, it'll stop this time. But I know FPDR is required to follow the charter. but also, and they're not required to follow PERS rules and regulations. I understand that, and that is correct. But they are required to be under the law of ORS. They can't work outside ORS. And then ORS has certain regulations in there that say that FPDR has to be equal to or better than PERS in their aspects. And two major aspects are retirement pension, disability pension. And those are the two major aspects. And now that FPDR is not using that word disability retirement, that word just was taken out, but I can produce probably 100 documents, 200 documents to say FPDR, disability retirement. It's the same thing as a pension retirement, exact same thing. But when those members went off on disability retirement, they're being taxed, which is another issue, but it still went off on disability retirement. Now that term is gone. They're following the letter of the law of the pension. I understand that. But for years, they were calling it, I was told, I have notes at home telling me that I was going to get a disability pension in my 30th year. Now, all of a sudden, that's all changed. They said, well, no, you're going to get a pension retirement now. That's it, as if you work 30 years. And for me, that negates everything. That negates everything I've had for the last I've been here 14 years, not by choice. I tried to come back in 2002.
Joe, can I interrupt you just for a sec? So just to get straight, do you feel like you're being treated differently than people in the past? Or do you think the charter's wrong? I'm trying to figure out, are you being treated differently than people before you?
Yes, because they medically separated me first. First of all, I was told by.
Are you saying they didn't used to medically separate people?
No.
They did that to you?
Right. In the past, normally in Fire Bureau, you were in BHQ and you were off as long as you were off until you reached a retirement point, put you up a disability retirement. And
Sam, do you believe that's how it was done in the past? And when was the change?
It has nothing to do with FPDR. This is an HR and a Fire Police Bureau issue.
Well,
Do you med
I don't. It does have something to do with FPDR.
The bureaus have done it inconsistently for a long time.
What does that mean?
It means sometimes they put people on medical terminations, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they'll carry people on their rolls as an employee for 20 years, even though they've been on disability. Sometimes they've put them on medical separation after 2 to 4 or 5 years. It's been inconsistent, and it's a bureau and an HR decision to make. But as far as its impact on FPDR, it has zero impact on FPDR.
So your FPDR is treating people, you think that people are being treated exactly the same now?
Yes. The challenge that we have with it is, and we always have had since 1948, when this plan was first created, only one pension. How you entered into the pension is two different ways. It's your age, it's when the pension starts is two different ways. One is if you do a normal retirement or sometimes a service retirement. So you've been actively working, you've hit 30 years or age 55, whatever the requirement is, you've decided we've labeled that as service retirement. If your disability, you come up until you hit disability retirement age per the charter, then you start your retirement. It's the same retirement plan. It's just what triggers and pushes you into the retirement plan are two different things. It's only one, well, actually, if you have PDNR and FPDR2, but for FPDNR2, it's only one retirement plan. It's how you enter it. If you're disability, you're forced to enter it based on disability retirement age. Service retirement, you can elect to do it when you want to, and you've got some criteria of outlined in the charter. The benefits are the same. The benefits have always been taxable. There's been no change since 1948. There's been no difference between it. The unfortunate part is we've labeled them service pension and disability pension, or service retirement, disability retirement, only because we've described how they started into the retirement system.
Does it say that in the charter?
It's not in the charter, so been talking to myself, we are banning that term publicly of disability retirement because it gives a misnomer that we have a separate retirement plan. For a service retirement plan, we don't. It's one retirement plan, one set of rules, one calculation, pensions calculated. There's no difference except the date the pension starts.
Have we ever taken anybody beyond the normal retirement age in disability?
There is one condition: if they become disabled within 2 years of that time period, we can carry them for 2 years, and that's explained in the charter. But for most people, no, we should not have been doing it.
But it has done. There are two members that went past 30 years, and around 35th year, they went ahead and retired on my disability on 35th year.
That was violation of the charter. Violation of the charter was written in 1948.
But they eventually did go on retirement. Nobody continues.
They went off on disability. Their form says disability retirement, and they signed it off, and that's all changed now. It's just called pension. He's right.
But at 35 years, they ended up with a taxed retirement.
Tax, disability, pension, Yeah, disability
was
pension
taxed.
Tax, correct.
Yeah. Is that what this issue is about? Because if the calculation of his benefit has the same amount of service as if he had not been disabled.
Yep.
Then what is the issue? What is it? I'm not sure what it is you're seeking.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, for me, they told me that they medically separated me, and they said they're following a charter. They said after 5 years in a charter, HR rule says you're no longer a city employee. So Portland Fire Bureau and HR contact me by certified mail and have me sign for it. Say, guess what? You are now a civilian. You are no longer a city of Portland employee. You are no longer a Portland firefighter. You're a civilian. You're retired. It says you're retired. You retired, and I was on disability. So I retired on disability. They said. That was in 2010. I got the letter finally in 2014. Like I said, we had some other personal issues that took our time away, but when I finally pushed for the letter, it took about 2 years to get it. During that 2-year time frame, I lost my window to file an appeal with Boley. Boley said, you missed your timeline. I said, well, don't you think they know that? I've been trying for 2 years to get a response. I finally get a response, and they said, and the correspondence I have at home says, the city attorney's office was consulted. They consulted the city attorney's office, and that office said that, yes, you are no longer a city important employee. You are not a firefighter anymore. You're a civilian. You're gone. So I said, okay, if I'm gone, everybody leaves me alone. But during that time, they tried to freeze me. So had they won in court, I would have been off after 5 years. My disability would have been frozen for life, and that was my salary for life. They went off. Well, the charter says they can't do that. The charter says it's your position and rank you held at the time, and when that gets a raise as per contract, you get a raise. Well, after 3 years in court, we did win, and they got the charter. The charter stays as it is. They interpreted FPDR director interpreted the charter a different way all of a sudden, and said no more raises for you. And I objected. Yes, I objected. I appealed, and we were at the administrative law court. In the end, a year it took, we won. Had they won, my 5 years would have been gone. I could have got letters, guess what? Now you're gone, 5 years is up, your salary is frozen for life. Any disabled cop or firefighter goes off is no longer a Portland police officer or firefighter, therefore not entitled to the contract. So that's your salary frozen for life. A savings for the city? Yes, small savings for the city. Impact a member? Tremendously. Then it's fixed for life. But the thing is, if you go off on disability, for me, I can't get insurance. No one wants to insure me. Most members go off at 84%. They take the most they can get, 84%. They get a life insurance policy, they're fine. A person like me, which is a small percent of people that are in my category, very, very small amount of us that are permanently disabled, we go off, we're uninsurable. So we have to, if we're forced to take the other option now, where I have to come back and retire a second time and forced to take that option, I've got to go down and take the lowest amount, thereby reducing my income, be taxed on it, so in order to leave my wife some income so she can have some quality of life. If I took the 84%, we lose our house. She couldn't afford to stay there. So I'm forced to take the lowest amount.
So we're just trying to understand
So see, in my
how it
mind,
affects you on just the basis. So healthcare,
well,
because right now your healthcare is provided by the city, I take it.
no. Well, for my disability, my own personal, I pay for it through Medicare. I've been on Medicare 7 years now. I pay for that myself.
Since you were medically separated from the city, then you lost your medical benefits here also.
I lost that back in 2002. I lost them. I lost medical benefits. And then through DPSST, I qualified for a permanent disability from the city of Portland and Fire Bureau, and my position at the time said this guy's permanently disabled, so I got health coverage for 5 years from DPST to help me, my wife and I.
But if they retire you tomorrow, how is that going to affect your health care?
Oh, well, it should affect Medicare. Now I went off my pension all of a sudden. That's what your status changed. You're a pension retiree now. You're no longer a disabled member. So your disability status changed all of a sudden. And that's going to affect me because now, and the city had nothing to do with that. That's something I earned in the previous fire department. My previous jobs, I earned that. And we're also impacted. As you know, Social Security, I lost about half that anyway because of not paying into it. But that's another issue. But my status changes from a disability. If they call it disability retirement, which they did for years, and he's right, they were doing it for years, whether it was, then he's got it back in line, word for the charter now. But what I'm saying is, they told me 5 years ago I was gone, a civilian. And I said, I didn't care about my sick leave payoff at that time as long as you left me alone. But they didn't leave me alone. So since they didn't leave me alone, then it brings everything back into play again. Well, I do care about my sick leave payoff. I do care about my bank hours I had there. I do care about those things because you didn't leave me alone. You're pressuring me to do this other option, a pension option, even though I'm a civilian, you said. I work for the city of Portland. Bottom line, whatever bureau we work for, we all work for the city of Portland. And they told me, as per charter, you're gone. And that was consulted by the city attorney's office. So I took that as valid legal document because they made me sign for it, first of all, and they said the city attorney approved it. So I assumed that was correct. The FPDR comes along and says, wait a minute, no, we're going to apply these set of rules here. And they're going to follow their rules. Well, they're in conflict for me, and I'm caught in the middle of all that. And I just want a resolution that's fair and equitable,
Joe,
fair to my.
sorry to interrupt you again. Let me try it a different way. What happens to you if you go in and sign the retirement forms? What's going to happen day after that?
Well,
You're going to lose money? Or
yeah,
you're
yeah.
Lose healthcare? Tell us exactly what money you're
I
going
won't
to
lose
lose.
any I pay my healthcare I have is on my own, okay?
What money are you going to lose?
What I'll lose is, right now, I make 75% of what I made when 75% of a captain in the Marine program, which I was. And I'm compensated for that right now. And right now what happens is I get X amount of dollars. In order to maintain that same amount, which I'm not going to be able to, I'd have to take 84%, the highest amount. I can't take that because it leaves my wife at 25%. So I'm forced to go down to 2.2%, which is the lowest amount. It's about 66,000, I think it is. And then taxed on that drops down by another 30% or so, drops you down. So right now, my income is not taxed under state and federal work comp laws. But now all of a sudden, my status is going to be changed to a pension person now. So that I have to go to the lowest amount in order to leave my wife with something. In order to leave her with that amount of money, I have to go 2.2, the lowest amount. And what the savings Dell talked about before was, if all these members that retired 84% or from disability, if they would switch back to 75% of their income, what's under work comp, which is in the line work comp laws, as far as taxability in that, under state and federal work comp laws, they get a 9% savings. Every member gets 9% back. And every member, if there's 100 members, 9% back, and every member comes back into the FPDR fund or reduces their liability at that point, because they're not going to pay 84%. They're going to drop down to 75%. And
I think we're getting a little off where the question was, so it's.
Well, for me, it's
going to be a reduction in
right,
pay
and
for
then
you.
what I'm going to do is I already talked to EEOC office. EEOC said that if what they do, if they said you're a civilian already and they force you to retire a second time and your income is less, then you have a discrimination suit against City of Portland, and I will file it. I do not want to file it, but I will file it because I am going to have less money. They said if you're going to have less money then after you do this, then you're being discriminated against based on a disability, based on a permanent disability that's been approved by the city, by the Fire Bureau, by the city, by the state, and now by the federal government. So all these four entities approve my disability status where I'm at.
Okay.
So,
Darrell, did you want to?
Yeah, so Darrell Bechtel, legal counsel for FPDR. There's a couple of things that are getting a little bit jumbled here, and so I thought it might be helpful just to kind of separate things out. First of all, medical separation is an employment status. It's not something that is derived from the charter or the rules. It's something that derives from the City of Portland rules, but also it's a status of whether you're employed by the city or not. So that's a separate thing. It doesn't necessarily impact your benefits or cause a retirement. Then there's the retirement issue. If you have not reached disability retirement age and you're out on disability, like Sam said, you'll continue to receive your disability benefits until you reach disability retirement age, in which case then you'll roll over into the disability benefit system, retirement benefit system. And so we're talking about multiple stages and things that are happening kind of over a long period of time that are getting a little bit jumbled. And
yeah, then the letter I received, they shouldn't have said that you retired on disability retirement. They said you retired other than a pension retirement. Therefore, you're not entitled to any of the benefits of a pension retirement since you were on disability. So that negates all your pension retirement benefits. And I said I accepted all that, and as long as they just leave me alone, And then they didn't. They froze it. Long story short, we won that, and now all of a sudden they're going to say these rules apply to you over here.
that's a different issue as well.
So I just think there needs to be, if you haven't already done the due diligence, because we do not want to be sued. We don't want to discriminate against anybody, so we want to take his concerns very.
And I'd be happy to look into that and look at your file. I've not reviewed your file. It sounds as though you are concerned about becoming a retiree, receiving retirement benefits because you don't want to be taxed, and that you want to remain on the disability system. But the charter doesn't provide for that, and neither do the rules. And so even if there were some sort of change that would permit like a disability retirement, such as what the system Mr. Stevens has been advocating for, it wouldn't impact you because you're under a version of the plan that would precede any of those changes, and it wouldn't impact the benefits that.
I wouldn't mind speaking to her because the laws Oregon law did change in 2008. That does impact me. It does impact everybody who's on and who's been retired already and who's currently working and who's retired in the future. And we can sit down, I can show you that. We can talk about that, away from the board, and talk about that and show you the legalities here. Yes, but to me, two different parts of the charter will apply. One part over here says you're gone, and this, well, now you're gone. Okay, guess what? Now we're going to put this over here. And I thought this part may not apply because they applied this part over here. I thought that might have negated that part, but obviously it didn't. They're all coming together. I understand what Sam's doing. He's following the letter of the law of the charter because he wants to make sure if we have any lawsuits coming in, we're following the law now. Even though we gave disability retirement, then mistake it was, now we're going to follow the letter of the law. That's fine, but over here, they took this and did this to me, and now they say, well, forget all that. Let's put you over here and do this to you now. And I said, well, you can't have it both ways. You need to have one or the other.
Well,
Sam, who on your staff should be on point for this?
We've addressed quite a bit of it. Darrell Lee and I will talk and figure out what's a strategy to do it.
At least put it in writing so that it's clear
With
for
what
both
they're
Joe
doing.
and for the board.
Yeah.
We'll need to move on.
Just
now.
let me tell you for the board is, in Mr. Jim Cass' case, he is very soon going to approach disability retirement age. And so per the charter, his disability benefits would end given the way it is, and he'll need to sign up for retirement. Now, it's something that Joe and I can talk about, but I think maybe Darrell Lee and I can get together and strategize how to do it. There are, I think, as David is saying, there's multiple issues. I've done a lot of research into Mr. Jim Cass' case. There's a lot of multiple issues, a lot of multiple things here, and sometimes they do make this a complicated issue. But, I'm going to probably take the hat when I look at it from Fpdr, from the charter and how we interpret the charter. It's pretty straightforward in what we have to do. I understand his concern about what his financial situation is going to be when he goes on retirement. Okay. I don't disagree with some of some of the points that he's making with it. I think he will be making some choices that will have financial impact to him. But that involves things that are well beyond the charter's control and well beyond Fpdr's control. The health insurance, Medicare, so what Social Security may be doing. There's a lot of components to anytime anybody retires. There's a lot of components, and we are just one component of that. And so again, I think Darrell Lee and I can talk about it, strategize with it, and then
Yeah, we'll review the file and gather information to present to the board. I think it's difficult to talk about Mr. Jankowski's kind of entire file without having reviewed it and understanding the landscape of what happened in his particular situation. So it would probably be helpful for everyone to get that additional information so that we can have a more fruitful discussion.
Fair enough. And please review the lawsuit that Fpdr filed.
Yes, I have a copy of that. Yep.
Which was, again, following the charter,
Yeah.
but it was not following the charter. It was a different interpretation of the charter.
I just want to make sure I think there's state law that overrides our charter.
Yes, yes.
So we got to be.
I'd be interested to see that because I'm not aware
Well,
of
any discrimination, can't have a charter that discriminates against.
I don't think I will give my personal
I'm not saying that
I
it does.
don't think
but
it does.
If there's
with
some
it. I think it's
valid, I want to make sure we're really paying attention.
I'm quite certain we are, but again, I think Darrell and I need to talk about it here, and we need to keep this. The challenge we have is we're getting a very individual case and making it very public in a board meeting, which I think we need to be talking about it here and then present some options and take a look at it. Because there's a lot of complexity to the situation with it. And so, again, I think
One last comment. Yes, Fpdr operates on their own and everything else, but the only reason Fpdr is allowed to do that is because we're not part of PERS. And the only reason that is because PERS says that every firefighter and police officer has to be part of PERS. If you're not, you have a separate system, it has to be equal to or better than PERS. Then you're allowed to be outside of PERS. You produce an actuary that shows you are equal to or better than PERS, gets approved by the PERS, looks at that, and says, look, the PERS board looks at that, okay, you can be outside. So the PERS board does have some impact over Fpdr because you're operating outside, and they're responsible to make sure you're complying with that. Because if you're not, then you got to take and get these members back in.
We are compliant. We do have a
We do have a
ruling from PERS that we are compliant.
Let's move on to the next issue. Joe, we will have folks get in touch with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
For one, would at least like to see a similar write-up. Sam, just
Okay.
general, nondescript. We don't need medical issues in it, but once this is figured out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Will do.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sam.
Okay, thank you.
Like I said, we'll look at that this one. And I may give you a call if we need more information from your side.
Anytime.
Okay.
I'm home.
Okay.
Mr. McGarr. Item 5, legal update, alternate payee issue.
I'll be remarkably brief. As you recall, I met with each of you in some capacity to discuss a potential settlement of a claim in the Office of Administrative Hearing by 3 firefighters regarding a reversionary interest in their alternate payee's benefit when the alternate payee predeceases the member. The direction of the board and of Sam was to reach a global settlement of the issue so as not just affecting the 3 firefighters who actually have had their alternate payee predecease them, but should the situation occur again, all members of the FPDNR that would be affected. Just as a side note, there were 2 grievances filed by the Portland Police and Portland Police Commanding Officers Association regarding a change to a resolution that this board made in 2009 that kind of changed a prior determination of the board in 1994 regarding the reversionary interest. In an attempt to settle all of that, we had proposed something that was financially neutral on an individualized basis, as you recall, but a little different if you looked at the plan as a whole. And each of you had been comfortable with that proposal. The last I heard, the settlement proposal was rejected by the Portland Police Commanding Officers Association. So in line with the fact that we're looking for a global settlement of the issue, we are back to the 3 gentlemen and their claim against the FPDNR in the Office of Administrative Hearing and an arbitration on the same issue by the Portland Firefighters Association coming up at the beginning of June, I believe, on the issue of whether the change done by the board in 2009 was allowed under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement. So that will... What's that?
We need to restate that. We're not bound by the collective bargaining agreement.
Whether it violated the terms of the collective bargaining agreement. So that's the issue that we're back. I mean, going back to the tails they win, heads you lose proposition, I thought what we offered them was remarkably fair and would have gone a long way to smoothing a lot of issues over in terms of an agreement between this board and the decisions that arbitrators make in the collective bargaining process. But they've chosen to go the route of the arbitration path, and if we ultimately have to pay something out of those arbitrations, we'll be back to that'll be something that the city is on the hook for and not the FPDNR, and we'll have discussions about that if and when the time comes.
Very fair settlement offer.
Yeah, I wanted to say I was very disappointed it wasn't accepted because I think Lauren, Ken, and Hank Kaplan worked really hard with coming up with a resolution for this, and I thought it was, as Ken said, a very respectable settlement. I think it played fair to everybody. It was just frustrating that it got really close and just didn't quite make it because I really wanted to come up with a global solution that would resolve the matter. And meanwhile, I do want to thank Ken, Lauren, and even Hank for the work that they've done on it. I want to thank Nancy Hartline and Stacy Jones from my staff who did a lot of work in the background with it, and also Matt Larrabee of Millman who ran a lot of numbers. So there are a lot of people who put a lot of effort and numbers and analysis into this. I want to thank them all, and I just very disappointed that we didn't get this passed.
Ken and Sam, are these efforts completely dead, or are the 2 main associations trying to influence PPCOA's decision?
I have no idea. I think the impression that we got from Hank was that it was dead.
I think that, again, we are not interested in piecemealing this. We want it taken care of so that everybody has certainty as to how this is going to be done. And I mean, as long as I'm up here under the auspices of a legal update and legal issues, all of these settlements, including the overpayment, are done with the other side being represented by counsel. So everything in the overpayment was the result of a negotiation, including who was in the class. I've said this a million times, but the decision about who was in the class was made by the plaintiff's attorneys, not by me, and not by anybody from our office. So I think that should be, stated out front. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thanks for reminding us.
We have a speaker.
We have 2 sign-ups.
On this issue? Okay. Is Alan here?
I think he had to leave.
Has Alan left? I guess I'll carry the argument forward. In that report that we were arguing about earlier, where they made the statement that the pension board does not reduce benefits to save money. And I said, I have some examples where they've done so, and you didn't want me to give those. I would offer at this time that this is one of the examples. When we put together the benefit package for the reform pension plan, this was specifically included that if a member's went through a divorce and his ex-wife would die prior to him, that the portion of the pension that she had received would be restored to the member who had earned it. That was part of the plan. Okay, and I would just comment on this. I don't think whatever rationale was given for the board to change that benefit, I don't think it was proper. Yes.
This legal update is about the settlement that was just rejected by the associations, not the 2009 board decision.
Oh, okay, well, but they certainly do relate, don't they?
That just fell through, that'd be.
But you see the relationship.
I understand what you're saying, I'm telling you that's not on the agenda.
And I will let you know, this settlement was looking to mostly restore that benefit that was taken away. So that's what this was. You had a thing given in '94, taken away in 2009. I looked for a way to restore that, as much of that benefit as we could, to keep in compliance with state statute.
Yeah, Mr. Stevens, this settlement was signed off on by this board and by the lawyers representing at least 2 of the 3 associations. I wasn't aware PPCOA had different representation, but this is something we all agreed on, and it was just rejected.
Did the labor representatives agree to that?
It was Hank
Just
Kaplan.
heard from our lawyer, Dell, the 2 big associations agreed to it, or preliminarily agreed to it. It was never entered into. The Commanding Officers Association apparently did not.
Well, I just want to offer the testimony that it's hard for the members that have earned a pension and then seen half of it go away, and then the circumstances change, and they thought that they were going to receive it back, the other half back, to be denied that. And I don't understand why the board would pursue that line of embarkation where the city would keep the portion that had been distributed and the member had died. Why would the board want to do that? Why would you want to reduce the benefit from the member who had earned the pension? What's the rationale for that?
Not going to revisit old decisions. Did you want to speak on behalf of Alan? Okay. We're not revisiting it.
Because I will tell you, those issues were discussed, and the way you do it, there's a whole actuarial means behind it. I want to tell you right now, I will state that what this settlement was to restore most of that benefit that was taken away in 2009. This was not a takeaway. This was, if you want to call it, an add back. So I just want to make that point. This was not a place where we were trying to reduce benefits.
I wasn't on the board at the time, but if I remember somebody speaking on it, they removed that provision because they thought it was illegal.
Yeah, and we went back and readjusted it to make it legal. I think
But that was, just to go back to why it was removed, that was
Yeah.
the advice that was given, that
Yeah.
they thought it run afoul of the law.
Yeah, and that's why we did not go back and give 100% back. We still had to try to keep it within law. So it wasn't restoring back to 94, it was giving a settlement that approached to what we could in 94 as far as we can, but keep it legal.
There was the ruling that came back, did you, I don't know why we're getting all the way into this, but did you decide that that was illegal? The ruling that came back, that how it was supposed to be interpreted from the case that, I don't know,
There
was
was no,
PCOA?
PCOA was a union thing of saying you can't take away this benefit. is
And
really
it
what-
actually, I read it, and it said you had to put it back in.
I had to put it back in, but there was no talking about the fact that putting it back in violated the state statute that actually created the alternate payee.
So you're still under the impression that it violated?
Yes,
Okay.
that's why we
you
had
an
the
agreement.
settlement was not 100% restore. It
Did-
was as close as we could get and keep it legal.
But they did not the arbitrator award the pension back to the member? Wasn't that the basis of his award?
I think it said you had to put the rule back in, from what I understand.
And our
And
stance
then
was
this-
is that the rule
Yeah.
is conflicts with law. So that's where this disagreement comes in with. That's why the settlement,
We
so
don't-
we could try to get the best of both worlds.
We don't have enough information in front of us to debate the 2009 board vote, so I'm not going to allow
Okay,
this
that's
to
fine.
continue anymore. We'll take it up at a future meeting if we need to, but three of us need to be briefed and
Okay.
provided with full minutes if we need to reopen that.
Okay.
Okay? All right, let's move on to FPDR updates.
FPDR, actually, number 6, which is update nothing there, so we'll jump to number 7, assuming nobody wanted to talk about nothing. So this is future meeting agenda. So next month, we're going to talk about the tax anticipation notes. It's an annual decision we have to put out. And it will be discussing the annual adjustment or the COLA. We pushed this off simply because we've been waiting for the Supreme Court decision. I don't know when it's going to come in, so if it's not been decided, we'll have to make a decision, or you all, against the existing law. I am advising each one of you, keep your June 23rd board meeting date open, because if the Supreme Court comes out, we are going to meet, because we need to get this decision resolved by July 1. Because the last thing I want to do is have my staff start down one road and then have us come back and have my staff undo a whole bunch of work with it. So just keep that June 23rd date on your calendar, and that's going to be contingent on whether or not the Supreme Court brings a decision down on 822 and 861. And then our staff, as long as city attorneys, will cram a lot and see what we can do to get, and Lauren, a lot of the information of what that decision means to FPDR.
How does PERS, do they meet and decide what they're going to do, or is it just automatic by how the law is written? Do they do what we do? Do they?
PERS their COLA is structured by statute. It's very
Yeah,
specific.
so they're going to follow that unless
They're
their
gonna
change
follow
comes
it, yeah.
out.
That's what they're going to do.
And so, Sam, you're suggesting we wait as long as possible to see if the Supreme Court decides?
May 26th is our last scheduled meeting.
Right.
June is a
23rd.
placeholder. So I think in May, if we do not hear from the Supreme Court, I'm going to recommend you make a decision based on existing law. Should the Supreme Court come in after that or too close to that meeting to where we can't get you the information of the impact of that,
I understand all that, but your point is, let's wait until the last possible minute so that
Which
we
is
don't
May.
send you off on one direction
Yeah.
and then hear from the Supreme Court.
But if we don't hear by the Supreme Court by May 26th, we are going to meet, and I do want a decision based on at that time.
Yeah.
If they do make a decision between then and July 1, we're going to come back and meet and rethink that decision.
June is later than we've traditionally adopted.
Yeah,
COLA.
May is usually when you.
Jason, is this going to cause problems for the members, you think?
It's payroll. It's the one that's going to have to deal with it, but.
Yeah, it's getting really late.
Yeah, but and it goes into effect August 1st, correct?
So that'll be the first check. It technically goes into effect July 1.
Check after our
Yeah.
board meeting, practically.
So it'll be the August checks.
No, I think if there's a chance they're going to change something, I don't think we need to do it twice. I think we'll be fine. Because I think we all know, or we have a pretty good idea what it's going to be if nothing comes back, right?
Well, the risk that you have, they may wait till July to come back. I mean, so there's no guarantee they're going to have it made by the June meeting. That's the thing. We have no idea when, and I think I keep hearing in the next 2 months. Well, I don't know what in the world that means, because I've been hearing next 2 months since the first of the year. So they don't even have to make it in this legislative session. They can push it off to the end of the year or next year if they want. So there is no time limit with it. I'm push this down as far as we can go before we at FPDR need a decision so we can start prepping for COLAs on
Well,
people.
as far out as you can push it and to make it work would be the best.
I'd like to discuss, I'm gonna leave it on for May 26th. You guys can make a decision if you don't want to discuss it then, but June, if we don't discuss it May 26th, or if we don't hear the Supreme Court, I'm gonna tell you, keep your June 23rd, because as soon as the Supreme Court comes in, I want to start this discussion.
Okay.
Because I really don't want my staff to go back in and undo a whole bunch of COLA stuff and re-put it back in. It just creates a lot of havoc for them and our members.
Can you get a communication out to the bureaus at least and ask them to let their members know that the COLA decision is going to be delayed this year?
Well, I can.
At least ask them, or at least notify the bureaus, okay? Because you're going to start getting flooded with calls otherwise.
Yeah, but we do need to have some decision by July 1. I mean, whether it's stay with the old,
Well, obviously,
existing laws or-
follow current law. If the Supreme Court hasn't decided by then, that's a no-brainer.
well, but the current law, then you have your discretion, and you have to tell me what your discretion is. Current law, the way we do is interpret the ceiling, and you all have to interpret what that is. So that's where I need the decision from you.
Okay.
Okay, so that's May and June. In July, we will, I'd send an email out. We're doing a claim timeliness study, for disability claims. We ask people to submit within 30 days. We're looking at that. I was targeting that for May, but this has a lot of tendrils as you start looking through it, and so we want to look at it all. We had a good public hearing a few weeks ago, some good input, and have a lot of input from other stakeholders and what it is. So I think it'll be a good study and some good information for you all, and we can decide from there what or if there should be any changes. And then just in September 22 is where I'm sort of packing rules up that we've accumulated over the year. Nothing real big, except I think we are, for the election, which we have both the fire and police trustees positions are up for election this year. The fire's asked to go to the mail-in method, which police used last year. So we're adjusting the rules to an all mail-in thing there.
Jason's position?
Yeah.
Ours, we used to carry a ballot box around all the stations from 1920 probably. So we ran into some problems
Do we
with
need
that.
to fund a campaign?
No.
Jason for FPDR?
So just to let you know, that'll probably be the most meaty one, I think, but there'll be some other ones, and they're trying to clean up and a few other things.
Okay. So Sam, just back to the Supreme Court decision. So I think do plan for a decision in May by at least giving us all the background materials, past couple of COLAs and everything, so that we're prepared to make a decision.
Okay.
If we need to call halt to it at that meeting, we will. If we need to call a special board meeting on short notice, it's probably gonna be pretty hard in summer, but I presume we can find a half hour that we can get 3 of us here.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. Let's just hold the June 23rd, because that is a slot that was supposed to be on your calendar
You're
anyway.
assuming we'll have a quorum on June 23rd.
Well,
Are you going to, could you send an email to the board?
Yeah.
Telling this, everybody, even the people aren't here, how important those meetings might
Yeah.
end up being.
Okay. Will do. That's everything I've got.
Okay. Summary of expenditures is in the back of the book, I presume? Yep.
Yes. And if anybody has any questions about those, feel free to contact myself or Nancy Hartline if you want, just if you yourself, or we can talk about them in the board meeting.
Questions, gentlemen?
Nope.
Okay. Good to go.
Okay, thank you
We're
much.
out of here.